Chapter 2671. The wretched mosquito slayers bedding the Black Mosquito Bastion was divided into 4 levels of space. Due to the different functions of each level, the internal structure of each level was clearly different as well. For example, the bottommost level, the Cataclysm, was an enormous space that was dotted with numerous cages. The second level was used to house the 10,000 demon scouts of the Black Mosquito Bastion. It was a labyrinth of densely packed caverns. As for the upper 2 levels, they belonged to the wealthy of the Black Mosquito Bastion. Those who lived on these levels were all elites of the demon race. In other words, they were at least late-stage core star. Of course, not all demon cultivator scouts who had stepped into the 7th level of the star core realm would be able to enter the upper 2 levels. At the very least, the 2,000-man captains under Yi Xian's command were all at the 7th level of the star core realm. However, they were still hanging around in the 2nd level of the slums. Since it was a wealthy area, the upper 2 levels were obviously not the same as the lower 2 levels. All that was considered in terms of planning and arrangement was to make the best use of everything. It was important to note that the total number of demon elites living on the upper 2 levels was only a little more than 1,000. 1,000 demons occupied 2 whole levels of space. No matter how wasteful the construction of these 2 levels was, it was still more than enough. As for what the 4th level would be like, Yi Xian had no idea. However, the 3rd level in front of him was clearly luxurious and extravagant. It was clear that the structure of this floor did not consider practicality or making the best use of everything. Instead, it was a kind of comfort and enjoyment. This allowed the elites of the demon race to naturally develop an extremely strong sense of superiority in their lives. After stepping out of the black light membrane of the spatial door, Yi Xian immediately turned his head to look around and began to examine his surroundings. There were also 3 enormous portals behind him. Yi Xian and the wretched mosquito slayer had come out from the one on the left, while the one on the right led to the demon's pawn nest that occupied a large area on the 3rd level. This was where the Black Mosquito's cavern was located. As for the portal in the middle, it appeared to be of a higher level. Its pillars and beams were engraved with more complex runes. It was clearly the portal that led to the 4th level. Although the 3 portals were lined up in a row, they weren't like the 2nd level below. Instead, they were located in the center of a large plaza. Although it was also a plaza, it wasn't as large as the one on the 2nd level. Furthermore, there were areas in front, behind, to the left and to the left. The square under his feet was more like an irregularly shaped, luxurious altar. 3 doors stood on the inner side, and behind them was a tall space curtain wall. Apart from the back, there was a passageway in front and on the left and right, respectively leading to different areas. The largest section was directly in front of them. It was the Black Mosquito Bastion's engine room, including its kinetic systems, weapon systems, and defense systems. Everything that was related to the Bastion's normal operations was located in this area. Of course, the Bastion's AI system was in the hands of Captain Naboshan, who was in charge of the 1st level of control. Through the AI system, he could directly control the enormous engine room. Yi Xian wasn't prepared to immediately make a move in this area. On one hand, it was because the elites of the Devil Cultivator were all relatively powerful, and on the other hand, it was because these fellows all had different positions. Once they discovered that something was amiss, they would be able to immediately send a warning to the 1st floor through the control of their positions. In addition to this computer room area that occupied the largest space, there were also 2 independent areas on the left and right. However, relatively speaking, the space and area occupied was obviously much smaller. On the left side was the living area where the elites of the demon kin lived and cultivated. To the right was the storehouse. Aside from the resources the demon kin needed, there was also everything the 10,000 demon kin scouts on the Black Mosquito Bastion had gathered day and night in the domain of the fallen. For example, planetary cores, rare materials, treasures, and the like were all stored in the storehouse. Yi Xian was quite interested in these 2 areas. To him, the living area was obviously an even higher-level hunting ground. Of course, even if there weren't too many demon cultivator experts staying inside due to the rotation, there would at most be around 200 of them. However, due to their cultivation bases not being weak, this hunt was definitely not an easy task for Yi Xian. As for the warehouse area on the right, there was no need to mention it. Just thinking about the massive amount of star cores and various treasures inside caused Yi Xian's heart to thump with excitement. However, neither the living quarters on the left nor the warehouse area on the right was where Yi Xian and the wretched mosquito slayer were headed. The first place they were going to was the Black Mosquito Demon Beast's nest. The Banshee's nest was indeed on this level, but it was an independent space created using spatial folding technology. It could only be entered through the portal on the right. Otherwise, even if they searched every nook and cranny of the third level, they wouldn't be able to enter. At this moment, after the master and servant walked out of the spatial door on the left, the wretched mosquito butcher raised his foot and was about to walk forward. Yi Xian coldly snorted and immediately stopped him. Seeing that there was no one around, he brought up the matter of going to the demon's nest. The wretched mosquito slayer was obviously stunned when he heard this. Then he forced a bitter expression on his face and replied with a frown, "My lord, I'm not worried that you'll steal my job or go compete with that slut for your favor. The problem is that I really can't go now." When he heard that this guy actually had such thoughts, even thinking about how he was competing with him to serve that female mosquito, Yi Xian was caught off guard and almost fainted on the spot. Among all the demon slaves, this guy was the only one who was so weird. Sometimes, Yi Xian even wanted to strangle him to death on the spot. "My lord, you really don't believe me?" Seeing Yi Xian gnashing his teeth in anger, the wretched mosquito slayer spread his hands and continued pitifully, "It's not like you don't know why I'm going there. That female mosquito has a huge appetite. It won't let go until it's done tormenting me. Under such circumstances, if I don't make any preparations and go there casually, I'll be tortured to death on the bed. 3 days." At this point, the wretched mosquito slayer raised his hand and gestured 3 fingers. He grinned and said, "Just give me 3 days to soak in the potion. I usually soak in it for 7 days before I dare to go to bed. I'll only give you half a day." Chapter 2672. A poisonous halo. Although he'd only managed to buy a pitiful half a day's time, the wretched mosquito slayer had no choice but to compromise in the face of Yi Xian's uncompromising tone. His head drooped, and his expression was that of someone who just lost his father. Sighing, he led the way to his abode. The wretched mosquito slayer's abode was also located in the elite de Munkin's residential area on the left. The entire residential area was like a large, luxurious villa district. The environment was elegant and filled with greenery. Not far away were individual villas with courtyards. These villas were the residences of the elite demon kin. The wretched mosquito slayer's abode was one of them. The Black Mosquito Bastion only had about 1,000 demon kin in total. Of these, there were about 200 on the first floor, and about 800 on the third floor below. Of these 800 demon kin elites, 200 were permanently stationed in the warehouse area on the right. The remaining 400 were divided into 2 groups, and took turns to work in the engine room area. In other words, of the 400 or so villas in this residential area, only half of them were occupied at any given time. The 10,000 demon kin below were squeezed into the same space on the first floor, living in large bunks. The elite demon kin above, on the other hand, had left such luxurious villas empty for long periods of time. This was a huge difference, and even Yi Xian couldn't help but sigh. After entering the residential area, they hadn't gone far when the silhouettes of some of the demon kin elites began to appear. The wretched mosquito slayer immediately puffed out his chest, put his hands behind his back, and began to walk with his chin slightly raised. In order to match him, Yi Xian deliberately bent his back in an awkward manner. He kept his head down and didn't look around. It was obvious that he was one of the wretched mosquito slayer's new followers. Otherwise, the sudden appearance of an unfamiliar face in this area, where there weren't many demon kin to begin with, would obviously attract suspicious gazes. "I say, little Xian, I didn't lie to you, did I? The third floor is the real heaven. In the future, follow this old master and serve me well. Be diligent in your daily chores like serving tea, serving water, massaging shoulders, and washing feet." As he walked forward, the wretched mosquito slayer pinched his sharp, duck-like voice and began to teach Yi Xian. The words "little Xianzi" came out of his mouth without any hesitation. It was so smooth that it couldn't be any smoother. Hearing this, Xianyi only felt that it was dark in front of him and almost fell down. Was this really his demon slave? At this moment, even Yi Xian himself had doubts about this. Since ancient times, he had never heard of someone who dared to make fun of his master's servants. However, this fellow was soon unable to be complacent. Because as his figure appeared, the demon elites in this living area, one after another, after noticing this, their expressions changed abruptly. Then, as if they were avoiding a ghost, they all turned around and returned to their own villa cave residence. For a moment, the sound of the door closing could be heard incessantly. This scene was so strange that even Yi Xian was stunned. He suddenly understood why this fellow had to stroll down to the second floor every now and then. This was clearly the rhythm of a poisonous halo. Just by being seen from afar, such a large area was automatically cleared out in an instant. You bunch of bastards, one day I, Master Mosquito Slayer, will bring out that smelly female mosquito and have you line up to serve her one by one. Seeing this familiar scene in front of him, the wretched Mosquito Slayer, who was usually a little angry at most, but usually would quickly return to his cave residence in a sullen mood, actually roared loudly. This scene fell into the eyes of Yi Xian, although he did not know what kind of reaction the wretched Mosquito Slayer would have when he encountered such a situation. But this fellow had been hanging around in the third floor of the Demon Elite living area for 3 whole years. Judging from the behavior of those Demon Elites just now, it was obvious that they usually had this kind of attitude when they saw this fellow. Since that was the case, after 3 whole years, the wretched Mosquito Slayer should not have been so indifferent, right? No matter what, he should not have such a strong reaction. In addition, the content of the words that he had just blurted out in anger and embarrassment. Yi Xian frowned slightly as he pondered. In his mind, he faintly felt that he was about to grasp an important key. Unfortunately, that trace of inspiration only appeared halfway before it sank back down and could not be found again. However, after this incident, Yi Xian subconsciously became more cautious of the wretched Mosquito Slayer. Of course, he would not show any of this. At this moment, seeing that all the demon elites had returned to their own cave mansions, the wretched Mosquito Slayer also felt bored. In addition, time was of the essence, so after grumbling angrily for a while, he took the lead and walked far away to the cave mansions on the western side of the border. This was within Yi Xian's expectations. For an existence like him who had a poisonous halo, it would be strange if he did not live in such a remote border area. Soon, the two of them entered the wretched Mosquito Slayer's cave mansions. As the door closed, this fellow's demeanor immediately took a 180-degree turn and he returned in the blink of an eye. He nodded and bowed as he took the initiative to retreat behind Yi Xian. With a smile on his face, anyone could tell at a glance that this was a dog of a slave. Did you have a good time just now? Little Xian, you've been muttering those words in your heart for a long time, haven't you? Otherwise, you wouldn't have been able to speak so smoothly. You just opened your mouth and said it. As he casually walked around the mansions, Yi Xian quietly mocked and ridiculed him. At the same time, he secretly observed this fellow's reaction from the corner of his eye. The wretched Mosquito Slayer immediately began to explain in a panic. In any case, he already had a ready-made excuse. In order to cover up Yi Xian's identity, he opened his mouth and said it with sincerity. He looked like he would protect his master with his life, so Yi Xian really did not see anything wrong with him. However, the more he could not see the problem, the more it meant that there was definitely a problem. Otherwise, why was it that among the other 2,000 demon slaves, there was not even one who knew how to flatter and take the opportunity to offend someone like him? They were all subdued with the slave seal. Even if there were differences between them, this fellow was originally a weirdo, so the possibility of him mutating was not completely impossible. However, it should not be so exaggerated, right? As these thoughts flashed through his mind, Yi Xian could not help but recall the words that the wretched Mosquito Slayer had roared out in a moment of embarrassment and anger. Faintly, he suddenly felt that the glimmer of light that he had not grasped before seemed to be coming to him again. I couldn't tell. You're dressed so wretched and sloppy, but your cave mansions are so neat and tidy. After saying that, Yi Xian casually glanced at the wretched mosquito butcher behind him and casually continued, to be able to keep their living quarters in such an orderly manner without a single speck of dust, they are usually people with meticulous minds and introverted personalities. This isn't like you, it's really impressive. Hee my lord, don't praise me like that. It's just that I usually tidy up when I'm free. Chapter 2673. Assimilation of the slave seal. Before Yi Xian began to suspect the wretched Mosquito Slayer, he would immediately feel uncomfortable just thinking about this guy, let alone seeing him. He would have the urge to immediately call him over and strangle him to death on the spot. But now, after he began to suspect the wretched Mosquito Slayer, this strong feeling of disgust inexplicably disappeared. Perhaps this was because Yi Xian had more or less confirmed that this guy's extremely wretched appearance was actually just a disguise. This wasn't his true nature. Instead, he was very cautious and patient, and most likely did not lack some kind of firm belief or Tao heart. This could be seen from the fact that he had tidied up the huge space in this villa. Of course, even so, Yi Xian didn't dislike him that much. If he had a good impression of him, then no matter what, it was impossible. Yi Xian originally thought that this guy had to soak himself in the medicinal water before going to serve the Black Mosquito Slayer was just an excuse. His purpose was to stay in this villa for a few more days to prepare some kind of method. But when he saw that this guy had actually placed a huge bathtub in the side room of the villa's first floor, and there was indeed a strong medicinal fragrance in the air, Yi Xian finally understood. Based on the smell, the medicinal herbs that emitted this smell should have some special effects that could stimulate the body's strength and make it stronger for a short period of time. From this, it could be seen that this guy was not fooling around. He really only wanted to come back and soak himself in the medicinal water for a few days. In other words, if this guy was indeed faking it, then this was not his plan. Moreover, if the premise that he was not subdued and controlled by the slave seal was true, then why would he, a powerful existence with a satellite realm cultivation base, have to compromise so much and even kneel down in front of a small core realm ant like himself? This was obviously a scheme. Although there were many things on Yi Xian that were worthy of his schemes, whether it was the devouring system or the supergrade warship Purple Star Shuttle, he had no idea. Then, the only possibility left was the slave seal. Thinking of this, Yi Xian's eyes suddenly lit up. In an instant, he completely understood everything. At this time, the wretched mosquito slayer had already entered the side room and was making a racket in the medicine barrel. Yi Xian, who was left alone in the living room, pondered for a while before finally sitting cross-legged on the sofa. He closed his eyes and began to refine the 402 slave seals in his hands. In just half a day, it was clearly far from enough to refine all of these slave seals, even if it was just once. Yi Xian did not intend to do that. What he wanted to do now was to fuse the 2 slave seals that had been condensed for the longest time and the most times into one. Since the slave seal could be refined repeatedly, it could naturally be fused as well. This kind of fusion was actually the same as the effect of repeated refinement. After 2 ordinary slave seals were fused together, the effect was equivalent to a strengthened slave seal that had been refined twice. The reason why Yi Xian had not used this method to obtain the strengthened slave seal before was because of the efficiency. Refining 2 ordinary slave seals separately, and then fusing them together again to form a strengthened slave seal that had been refined twice. By doing this, Yi Xian would have to refine the slave seal 3 times. On the other hand, if he directly refined an ordinary slave seal and then refined it again, the final result would also be a strengthened slave seal that had been refined twice. However, by doing this, Yi Xian would only need to refine the slave seal twice. With a 50% difference in efficiency, he naturally had to choose the latter. But now, for the sake of stability, Yi Xian had no choice but to use this method to fuse the slave seal. After some analysis, Yi Xian now knew why using the slave seal to subdue the wretched mosquito slayer ended in failure. In the end, it was actually his own carelessness. The demon slaves on the 2nd floor of the Demon Dwellers' Cave residence area were all at the core state. The core state was the first major realm of the Starry Sky level. Therefore, Yi Xian successfully subdued them with an ordinary slave seal that had only been refined once. The wretched satellite state was the 3rd major realm of the Starry Sky level. If Yi Xian's guess was correct, in order to successfully subdue this guy, he would need at least a slave seal that had been refined thrice. In order to make a clearer description and distinction, let's call it a level 3 slave seal. But in reality, what Yi Qing used on him back then was only a level 2 slave seal that had been condensed twice. This was the key to his failure. By analogy, the black mosquito mother beast, whose cultivation had reached the 8th major realm, the black hole state, would need at least a level 8 slave seal to successfully subdue it. This time, the most crucial part of Yi Xian's entry into the 3rd floor was to subdue this beast. Otherwise, with his strength alone, it would be a joke if he wanted to clear 2 floors in just 8 days. Therefore, there was no room for carelessness. All the preparations had to be completed according to the strictest requirements. Now, among the 402 slave seals in his hands, there were 400 level 3 slave seals that had been refined thrice, and the remaining 2 were level 8 slave seals that had been refined 8 times. Although he already had level 8 slave seals, Yi Xian dared not let his guard down. What if the level 8 slave seals did not work? Wouldn't he be completely screwed? With this in mind, he gritted his teeth and decided to fuse them. The reason why he was so reluctant was because the more he fused 2 slave seals, the more the loss outweighed the gain. After fusing 2 level 1 slave seals, there was almost no loss, and he obtained a level 2 slave seal. However, after fusing 2 level 2 slave seals, the loss began to appear, and he only obtained a level 3 slave seal. After fusing 2 level 3 slave seals, he only obtained a level 4 slave seal. By analogy, if Yi Xian fused the 2 level 8 slave seals in his hands, he would only obtain a level 9 slave seal in the end. Of course, he could also directly refine the 2 level 8 slave seals separately instead of fusing them together. This way, he would obtain 2 level 9 slave seals in the end. Unfortunately, there was not enough time. The further he progressed, the longer the time needed to refine the slave seals. It would take an entire day to refine a level 8 slave seal and upgrade it to level 9. And it would only take 2 hours to refine 2 level 8 slave seals to level 9. Yi Xian could delay his trip to the demon's nest by 1 or 2 days, but this would definitely arouse the suspicion of the wretched mosquito butcher. Even though he now had many level 3 slave seals in his hands and could truly subdue the wretched mosquito butcher at any time, Yi Xian considered that the wretched mosquito butcher's temperament would most likely change because of this real subduing. When that time came, it was inevitable that the black mosquito female beast would notice something unusual. Therefore, Yi Xian did not dare to do so. Chapter 2674. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Entering the mosquito nest 2 hours later, Yi Xian successfully fused the 2 rank 8 slave seals into a rank 9 slave seal. Yi Xian did not touch the remaining 400 rank 3 slave seals. Even if he could not control the Black Mosquito Queen's rank 9 slave seal, he would not be able to upgrade it to a rank 10 slave seal in a short amount of time. Only those of the same level could fuse with each other. In order to fuse a level 10 slave seal, one would need 2 level 9 slave seals. Of course, Yi Xian could also use these 400 level 3 slave seals to fuse with them. 2 rank 3 slave seals would fuse into a rank 4 slave seal. 2 rank 4 slave seals would fuse into a rank 5 slave seal. In the end, he would only need to consume 64 rank 3 slave seals to obtain a rank 9 slave seal. But the time. Even though fusing slave seals only took about 2 hours, due to the large number of attempts, it would take about 2 days to fuse 64 rank 3 slave seals into a rank 9 slave seal. Therefore, Yi Xian decided to give up in the end. 1 rank 9 slave seal should be enough to control the Black Hole Realm Black Mosquito Queen. The rank 9 slave seal only took a little more than an hour to fuse. However, the time Yi Xian promised to bathe the Mosquito Queen in the potion was half a day, so there were still 3 to 4 hours left. Yi Xian was bored, so he wanted to go outside and see if he could find a chance to subdue a few demon slaves on the 3rd floor. However, after some hesitation, he gave up on the idea. The demons on the 3rd floor were all elites with cultivations above the 7th level of the Star Core realm. In fact, nearly half of them were no longer at the Star Core realm. With Yi Xian's current strength, he really didn't have much confidence in being able to silently complete all of this. The most important thing now was to subdue the Black Mosquito Queen. He should not cause any more trouble. With that in mind, Yi Xian started fusing the slave seals again, but this time, he did not use the rank 9 slave seal. Instead, he fused the 400 rank 3 slave seals into a rank 4 slave seal. It would take more than 2 hours to fuse 2 grade 8 crystals into a grade 9 crystal, but it would take a lot less time to fuse 2 grade 3 crystals into a grade 4 crystal. After an entire afternoon, Yi Xian had fused half of it. 203 levels had been turned into 100 level 4. Right now, he only had 301 slave seals. 1 level 9 slave seal, 100 level 4 slave seals, and 200 level 3 slave seals. At this time, the wretched mosquito slayer had also finished soaking in the potion. He changed into a very flashy outfit and walked out of the side room. It seemed that the effect of the potion was quite good. In just half a day, the wretched mosquito slayer seemed to have changed into a different person. His whole body was exuding an invisible vitality, and he was in high spirits, as if he had just been injected with chicken blood. Hee, I wonder what Master is going to do in that demon nest? Seeing Yi Xian, the wretched mosquito slayer, who had been walking out of the side room with his chest puffed out, immediately lowered his back and walked over with a grin. If Master has something important to do in there, remember to wait for me to hold that mosquito queen back. Although I only soaked in the potion for half a day today, the effect is quite good. I am full of energy now. Not to mention a mosquito, even if it is an elephant, I am confident that I can defeat it. It sounded casual, but it was obviously probing. Yi Xian sneered in his heart. He also casually replied, "Facing a black hole realm mosquito demon, what kind of important matter could I possibly have to do? I have never seen this kind of demon beast before, so I just want to broaden my horizons." Then I'm relieved. If it's just to broaden your horizons, you can just stay in the periphery after you enter. Hee, when that female mosquito and I are working, you can just sneak a few glances outside the central nest. These words made Yi Xian feel a little awkward. As the two talked, they left the wretched mosquito slayer's villa and walked toward the small plaza outside the elite demon dwellings. When they arrived at the plaza, the wretched mosquito slayer activated the space door on the other side with familiar ease. As the black film of light appeared, the two stepped in at the same time, and their figures quickly disappeared from the small plaza. When they reappeared, the two were already in the small independent space of the Black Mosquito Queen's nest. As soon as they entered this space, a large cloud of extremely dense black fog rushed toward them. Yi Xian took a deep breath, and the mental power source core in his knowledge shook slightly. He instantly felt his mental power become more active. He had heard from Barker that the black fog that filled the entire space of the Black Mosquito Queen was created by this female mosquito, and that it was very beneficial for demon dwellers' mental power cultivation. Yi Xian had already discovered this when he was on the first floor of the Myriad Hells. Now that he had entered the female mosquito's nest, the dense black fog made him feel even more deeply. "How is it, my lord?" The black fog inside the bastion is the mating aura that the female mosquito emits when it flees. Although it is a little strange, it is very beneficial for demon dwellers' mental power cultivation. The wretched mosquito slayer turned to look at Yi Xian with a dirty look on his face. "Do you know why I reached the satellite state in 3 years? When I came up, I was only at the star core state. In fact, it was because I was intimate with that coquettish mosquito. Breathing in its mating aura is so beneficial to our mental power. You can imagine how beneficial it is to have sex with that mosquito." He sounded as if he had gotten a great bargain. Yi Xian felt his hair stand on end when he heard this, and he quickly held his breath. He decided that he would never breathe in the coquettish mosquito's mating aura again, even if he was beaten to death. Because it was used as a nest for the Black Mosquito Queen, this small independent space called the Demon Nest was different from other places. It looked like a natural cave, and Yi Xian and the wretched mosquito slayer were standing on the outskirts of this cave. There was a space door behind them, and there were several passageways in front of them. The entire female mosquito's nest extends in all directions, but any of the passageways in front of us can lead to the center of the nest. That is the true core of the female mosquito's nest. It's basically there. This creature is very lazy. Seeing that Yi Xian was looking at the passageways, the wretched mosquito slayer immediately introduced them. Then he changed the topic and said, I'm going to serve that female mosquito. My lord, you can wander around by yourself. When we are working and that coquettish mosquito lets down its guard, my lord, you can pick a passageway and walk to the end. Just take a look from afar. I'll come back here to find you later, and then we'll leave together." As he spoke, the wretched mosquito slayer grinned at Yi Xian, then turned and ran toward one of the passageways. Chapter 2675. Translator, Nyoibo Studio Editor. Nyoibo Studio. Great benefits. The wretched mosquito killer had indeed not been controlled by Yi Xian's slave seal. At that time, Yi Xian had not fully understood some of the properties of the slave seal. He had only used a level 2 slave seal on the mosquito killer, so he had failed. On this point, Yi Xian's deduction was correct. However, he believed that the reason why the wretched mosquito butcher pretended to be crazy and recognized him as his master was because of his slave seal. He was completely wrong. The wretched mosquito killer was indeed interested in the slave seal. Although the level 2 slave seal that Yi Xian had used on him had not been able to completely control the wretched mosquito killer, the level 2 slave seal still had some effect. Therefore, the wretched mosquito killer's dazed expression at the beginning had not been an act. However, when the level 2 slave seal's effect had completely worn off, it had not succeeded in controlling the wretched mosquito killer. By the time he had gradually regained consciousness, Yi Xian had already led the other demon slaves to plant slave seals on the other demon scouts who had accidentally encountered the operation and participated in it. They had also removed the brains of those demon corpses. At that time, the wretched mosquito killer had already had the ability to resist, although the level 2 slave seal had affected his mental state and prevented him from fully displaying his strength for a short period of time. However, he was still a satellite state expert. Even if he was not in his best state, It would not be a problem for him to deal with a group of star core state ants. However, he was extremely shocked by Yi Xian's slave seal and his act of removing the brains of the demon corpses. He could see that Yi Xian had a secret realm. The slave seal was not a big deal, but the act of removing the brains of the demon corpses was not only shocking, but it also made his heart pound with eagerness. He suddenly had a bold guess in his heart. If this guess was true, then the benefits he would obtain in the end were simply unimaginable. To put it simply, he would become the master of the entire Black Mosquito Bastion in one leap, replace Naibuishan's current position, and seize his power. Such a tempting and huge benefit made him, a satellite state expert, pretend to be crazy and kneel in front of a star core state ant. What was the big deal? Of course, he could have made a move at that time and used force to subdue Yi Xian and force him to reveal his secrets. However, in order to play it safe, the wretched mosquito slayer did not do so in the end. On one hand, he was worried that Yi Xian would throw in another mysterious energy that could penetrate his skin and enter his body. At that time, he would be in a daze for a while. If all the demons swarmed him at that time and tore him apart, that would be too tragic. On the other hand, due to his cautious nature and meticulous mind, he was able to control so many demons through Yi Xian without anyone noticing. He immediately deduced that Yi Xian would definitely enter the third floor. As long as Yi Xian went to the third level, he would have a way to trick him into the devil's nest. After entering the devil's nest, everything he had planned would be in the bag. For example, now that he had brought Yi Xian into the devil's nest, the wretched mosquito slayer did not plan to keep an eye on him and let him roam freely. In any case, Yi Xian could not activate the space door, so even if he roamed around, he would still be in the devil's nest's independent space. What he had to do now was to persuade the female mosquito. Once she was moved, he would immediately make a move on Yi Xian. From then on, everything he had planned would officially begin. Yi Xian was unaware of all this. However, he knew that the wretched mosquito slayer must have brought him to this devil's nest for a reason. However, all this did not matter. Didn't Yi Xian have his own plans too? Both sides had their own plans and advantages. The wretched mosquito slayer's advantage was that he was stronger than Yi Xian, and at the same time, he had an even stronger mosquito lover. Oh no, it should be his lover. On the other hand, Yi Xian's advantage was that he had already realized that the wretched mosquito slayer was plotting something. He also had the slave seal in his hands, which was enough to control the other party. As for the powerful female mosquito, Yi Xian also had his own plans. As soon as the wretched mosquito slayer left, he immediately urged the mind source core in his sea of consciousness and used a large amount of mind power to activate the perfect oscillation technique. Buzz! An extremely weak buzzing sound was heard. Then, a massive amount of mind power enveloped Yi Xian's entire body. With his body as the center, everything within a 1-meter radius seemed to have been directly gouged out of this space. It was as if they no longer existed. Yi Xian could no longer sense any aura from his entire body. However, Yi Xian's mind source power was constantly being consumed to maintain the efficient operation of the perfect oscillation technique. Although this consumption was not too frightening, it was not easy either. With the total amount of mind source power stored in the mind source core in Yi Xian's sea of consciousness, it could only last for about a day at most. It was obviously enough to hide his body and launch a sneak attack on the female mosquito. After doing all this, Yi Xian prepared the level 9 slave seal. He immediately chose a passage and silently groped his way in. The entire devil's nest was like a cave of coiling silk. It was full of passages in all directions. In the center of these intertwined passages was a large hall about 100 meters in diameter. Although it was called a large hall, it actually looked like a natural cave. There were no daily human amenities in the devil's nest, such as tables and stools. There was only a mosquito nest that was piled up by a large amount of black withered grass. Of course, this so-called bird's nest was extraordinarily large. It occupied the entire area of the large hall, which was about 100 meters in diameter. To put it in perspective, the entire central devil's nest was actually a large bed that looked like a bird's nest. If one jumped down from any of the passages on the walls of the cave, they would fall directly into the bird's nest, which was equivalent to getting on the bed. Right now, there was a monster lying on the bed. It was a mosquito that was about the same size as a human. For a mosquito to be able to grow to the size of a human was indeed extremely frightening. However, although this mosquito's torso was still that of a mosquito, its head and limbs were no different from a human's. Judging from its head, This strange mosquito was indeed female. That was because its head was clearly a woman's face. Furthermore, it was an extremely bewitching and charming woman's face. Yi Xian, who had just walked to the end of a passage, saw everything clearly. The strange thing was that he had already arrived, but the wretched mosquito butcher was still nowhere to be seen. There was only the female mosquito in the mosquito nest below. There was no one else. Chapter 2676. Get out here. In his line of sight, the bruised and wretched mosquito slayer was wiping his tears as he jumped towards the mosquito nest bed below. He was still crying and complaining. When the words darling and the self-proclaimed Luan family entered Yi Xian's ears, it caused him to feel as if he'd been struck by lightning. His eyes widened in shock, and his mind was shaken to the point where he almost interrupted the perfect vibration of his mental skill. Soon, that guy landed in the big bed of the mosquito nest below. Then, he used his hands and feet to crawl toward the female mosquito that was lying there and giggling. He then laid down beside the female mosquito and hugged it in his arms. As he cried and complained, he used his other hand to caress the female mosquito's inhuman body. It was an expression of extreme thirst. He was still crying and complaining, but he already couldn't wait. Such a strange scene caused Yi Xian to feel awkward, but at the same time, it caused him to suddenly sigh with emotion. Amazing! No wonder he arrived later than Yi Xian. In order to gain sympathy, this guy punched him in the face in an unknown passage. Otherwise, how could he explain the bruises on his face? He just didn't know what this guy was planning to do, and how he planned to do it. Why did he have to treat him like this, and put on such a show in front of a female mosquito? Just as Yi Xian was sighing, the two guys below seemed to have reached the point of passion, and started to do something that would make one's face turn red. However, because the other one was a female mosquito, this kind of action that would make one's face turn red instantly turned into a bone-chilling cold. If he hadn't been waiting for this kind of opportunity, Yi Xian would have turned around and left. Frowning slightly, Yi Xian resisted the discomfort in his heart. He gritted his teeth and didn't turn around, but he didn't immediately make a move either. The two of them had just started. The female mosquito was still on top, but Yi Xian heard from the wretched mosquito slayer that when the female mosquito was excited, it would flip over and press the wretched mosquito slayer underneath. Generally speaking, women would become wilder when they were on top, and presumably, the female mosquito was the same. Since it was wilder, it meant that its mental attention was extremely focused on something, and its sensitivity to other things would be lower. When that happened, it would be the best time for Yi Xian to make a move. After all, his opponent was a powerful female mosquito with a black hole cultivation base, so Yi Xian had to be as cautious as possible. Soon, the time arrived. As the female mosquito flipped over and pressed down on the wretched mosquito butcher, who was crying out because of comfort or pain, it was unknown whether it was because of the wretched mosquito butcher. Then, it started to scream and drive. Yi Xian finally took action. Yongming enveloped the rank 9 slave seal with his mental power and quietly let it land on the mosquito bed below, where it slowly approached the female mosquito that was riding the wretched mosquito. The speed was very slow and very gentle. It was as if a snowflake was silently falling to the ground. The exit at the end of the passageway that Yi Xian was currently at was about 20 meters away from the bed. Although it was only a short distance of 20 meters, it took 2 to 3 minutes for the mental power wrapped around the level 9 slave seal to descend. During this time, Yi Xian's heart had been in his throat. Although it had only been 2 to 3 minutes, it felt like 2 to 3 years had passed. When the mental power finally landed on the female mosquito's neck and merged with it, Yi Xian's heart, which had been hanging in the air all this time, finally calmed down by half. However, it was only half done. Although the level 9 slave seal had already entered the female mosquito's body, Yi Xian wasn't completely confident that it would be able to successfully control it. After all, he had already failed once with the wretched mosquito slayer. That mistake was enough for Yi Xian to learn a lesson and become even more cautious. Therefore, he didn't intend to reveal himself. He continued to urge the power of the origin source in his mind power source core to maintain the perfect oscillation. Although he wasn't afraid of the wretched mosquito slayer, if the female mosquito wasn't successfully controlled, then Yi Xian would at least have a chance to turn the situation around. He wouldn't be killed on the spot. Yi Xian had previously learned that in the demonic dweller's ancestral star zone, demonic beasts like the black mosquito mother mosquito slayer also had a monster core in their brains, just like the demonic dwellers. In fact, When the demonic dwellers were stationed in the 10 space fortresses in the third universe of the human race, the 10 guardian demonic beasts had all been captured by the demonic dwellers' commander-level existences. They had used a powerful secret spiritual technique to leave restrictions in their monster cores. That was why the demonic beasts had obeyed orders and willingly stayed in the space fortresses to become guardian beasts. Since there were monster cores, then Yi Xian's slave seal should be useful. In fact, this was indeed the case. At this moment, as the level 9 slave seal entered the body of the black mosquito magical beast, the female mosquito that was riding on the wretched mosquito butcher suddenly stopped moving. It was like a robot that had run out of batteries. It stopped moving and stood there in a daze. The wretched mosquito slayer, who had obviously entered a state of mind, obviously hadn't realized that something was wrong. The guy's eyes were blurred as he mumbled, "What's wrong, dear? Why aren't you moving? Do you want more?" Such coquettish words had been said by a wretched middle-aged man in a coquettish tone that made one shudder all over. Yi Xian felt his stomach churn as he gritted his teeth. This guy was indeed poisonous. Even if he was faking it, the fact that he was able to feign such a state showed that he wasn't an ordinary poison. He was highly toxic, and no one dared to approach him. However, when he realized that after acting coquettishly for a while, the female mosquito riding on him still didn't move, the wretched mosquito slayer finally realized that something was wrong. He immediately opened his eyes. What he saw was that the female mosquito's eyes were blurred, as if its consciousness had fallen into a dreamland. The person was still here, but its consciousness was no longer in sync. He had encountered such a situation before, so he understood it at a glance. F***CK. Are you crazy, kid? Even this old man can't control that little thing of yours. How dare you make a move on it? The wretched mosquito slayer stared blankly at the female mosquito in a strange state for a few seconds. He then flipped over and stood up on the soft bed of the mosquito nest below. He raised his head and looked at the exits at the ends of the tunnels on the walls of the mosquito nest. Then, he roared in exasperation. "After all this time, you actually came to this demon nest because you wanted to make a move on it? Come out. Get the F***CK out of here." Chapter 2677. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. A blessing in disguise. From the words of the wretched mosquito slayer, Yi Xian could tell that this guy had brought him to this demon nest because he wanted to get his hands on the mother black mosquito beast. But that was not right. If that was the case, he should have at least gotten the slave seal from Yi Xian first. That was not right either. The wretched mosquito slayer had clearly said that Yi Xian's slave seal could not even subdue him. If that was the case, even if the wretched mosquito slayer really wanted to get his hands on the black mosquito demon beast, he would definitely not be planning to use the slave seal to do so. He did not even care about the slave seal, so why would he place his hopes on the slave seal? For a moment, Yi Xian was confused and could not figure it out. At this moment, the wretched mosquito butcher below raised his head and roared at his surroundings for a while. However, after not seeing Yi Xian appear, he seemed to have temporarily forgotten about this matter. In any case, he was sure that Yi Xian wouldn't be able to escape even if he wanted to. So he used both his hands and feet to crawl towards the black mosquito mother beast that had just been pushed to the side in a moment of desperation. At this moment, it was still in a confused state, and it was obvious that its mental consciousness was being corroded and affected by the 9th level slave seal. After hugging the mother black mosquito slayer, the wretched mosquito slayer anxiously shook the mother black mosquito slayer's body and muttered some words continuously. "Darling, wake up, why are you still like this? This shouldn't be. What's my cultivation base? What's your cultivation base? I'm only in the satellite state, and this wretched slave seal only stunned me for less than 3 minutes. With your cultivation base of black hole state level 6, it should be useless against you. How is it possible that you're still confused after so long? This doesn't make sense. Darling, let's stop playing, okay? Don't scare me. Didn't you say that as long as you can obtain a large amount of spiritual origin energy and break through to the advanced black hole state level 7, you will be able to break through the spiritual restriction that the tribe's great commander left in your demon core when he captured you? Then, you won't have to be afraid of the seal in Naibwa Mountain's hands anymore, right? Who does Naibwa Mountain think he is? He's just a black hole state level 3. He's not even in the intermediate black hole state. If he doesn't have that seal, how can he think he can be so cocky in front of a being in the intermediate black hole state? My darling, wake up, we have hope. I brought you a man. I brought you a treasure. That guy. That guy has cut a large amount of demon cores. And I have only been in contact with him for a few days. But he has only a few days' mind points. His is translation. Is you? Translation.
Is. Yuan. Is.
Oh, my darling. Wake up. I told you everything. Why are you still pretending? Don't let anything happen to you. I'm still hoping to help you refine the mental barrier. Then, after we destroy Mount Naibwa, the two of us will take the Black Mosquito ship and quietly return to the demon territory. We'll capture a bunch of demons as slaves and live a carefree life together. Why did you suddenly become like this?
Oh.
As he spoke, the wretched mosquito slayer saw no reaction from the female black mosquito slayer in his arms. He was still in a confused state, so it was clear that there was no hope. In the end, he started sobbing like there was no hope at all. Yi Xian was completely shocked when he heard his words. This wretched mosquito slayer was so shrewd and ambitious. He did not expect that everything he did was to help the black mosquito beast break free from the mind restrictions set by the demon tribe's great commander. He did not need to fear the mother seal in Mount Naibwa's hands. Then he could eliminate Mount Naibwa and take over the black mosquito fortress. Amidst his shock, Yi Xian secretly rejoiced. He never thought that the cultivation of this black mosquito beast would actually reach the great perfection of the sixth step of the black hole realm. With just one more step, it would be able to enter the late stage of the black hole realm. Although they were in the same realm, the difference between the late stage and the middle stage was like heaven and earth. Yi Xian personally experienced this when he stepped into the seventh order from the core realm from the sixth order. A powerful black hole realm demonic beast could not be subdued by a mere level 8 slave seal. After all, the black hole realm demonic beast was equivalent to a quasi-ninth order demonic beast. Now, Yi Xian had obviously succeeded. The black mosquito mother beast had been trapped under the influence of the rank 9 slave seal for such a long time. If it could break free, with its black hole realm cultivation base, it would have broken free a long time ago. The wretched mosquito slayer was obviously well aware of this. After all, he had experienced it once himself. It was because of this that the wretched mosquito slayer was so desperate at this moment. He was about to cry out loud. Thinking of this, Yi Xian's heart immediately calmed down. His heart, which had been hanging in his throat all this time, finally returned to his chest. Even so, Yi Xian still didn't plan on showing himself now. The wretched mosquito butcher's accidental failure back then had given him too much of a warning. As long as there was even the slightest bit of uncertainty, he had to be cautious. The other party was a black hole realm existence. Ha ha ha! What a blessing in disguise! I, the black mosquito beast, was forced to leave the demonic beast galaxy, and could no longer obtain spiritual origin energy to cultivate. After that, I was trapped in this space fortress and could not leave. When I was free, I thought of countless scenarios, but I never thought that I, the black mosquito beast, would use this method to break through to late 7th order demonic beast. Little guy hiding in the dark. Thank you very much. Just as Yi Xian's heart was calming down and he was secretly thinking that as long as the black mosquito beast was completely subdued and left this confused state, he would immediately descend and deal with the wretched mosquito slayer. Suddenly, the black mosquito beast's triumphant laughter came from below. It could not hide its ecstasy. Although I don't know what the spiritual seal you put in my body is, it is definitely more powerful than the spiritual seal that the great commander of the demonic beast tribe left in my brain. What's more, they repel and are hostile to each other. As soon as this thing entered my brain, it and the spiritual seal consumed each other. It is indeed powerful. When the spiritual seal left by the great commander of the demonic beast tribe was completely destroyed, it still had a small part of its power. Chapter 2678. Translator, Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translations falling into the devil's claws at this point. The mother mosquito actually shook its head and sighed emotionally. Then it muttered to itself again. On the other hand, whether it's this mysterious spiritual mark or the spiritual restriction left behind by the great demon commander, they are all the purest spiritual origins after being melted away. This is what this humble one desires the most. With this purest spirit source, this humble one can finally break through in one fell swoop. Little guy, thank you. Speaking of this, the black mosquito smiled and looked at Yi Xian from afar. Below, the wretched mosquito slayer, who suddenly saw the black mosquito wake up, was stunned. Not only was it not angry, but it was also so happy. Hearing the black mosquito magical beast's proud words, the wretched mosquito slayer was even more astonished. It was unknown whether he was frightened by the danger revealed in these words, or shocked by the fact that the black mosquito magical beast had finally broken free from the enslavement of the mental restriction and advanced to the late stage of the black hole realm. In short, it was completely dumbfounded for a moment. At the same time, Yi Xian, who was lurking at the end of the tunnel above, was also completely shocked. At this moment, Yi Xian's entire head was rumbling, and his face was full of sluggishness. The words of the black mosquito beast were like steel needles that pierced into his heart, causing him to feel an incomparable throbbing pain. He was unwilling. From the other party's words, Yi Xian could clearly tell that if there were no accidents, the level 9 slave seal that had been inserted into the black mosquito's body could have completely subdued and controlled the black mosquito. The spirit restriction left by the great demon commander could make the black mosquito submit at a critical moment, when Nibwa Mountain activated the mother seal. Also, the black mosquito had just said that the level 9 slave seal that had been inserted into its body was more powerful than the spirit mark left in its brain by the great demon commander. Since that was the case, it was obviously possible to completely enslave the black mosquito through this level 9 slave seal, unlike the spirit restriction left by the great demon commander, which was just a threat. Yi Xian's deduction was correct. A level 8 slave seal could deal with black hole state experts, who were in the 8th level of the star state. Even for a late black hole realm expert, a rank 9 slave seal was more than enough. Unfortunately, Yi Xian had calculated everything and was extremely cautious. But in the end, he still missed one thing, and that was the mental restriction that the great commander of the demon tribe left in the brain of the black mosquito demon beast. Even though the spiritual restriction wasn't as powerful as Yi Xian's level 9 slave seal, it still had the same effect. It was to control the black mosquito beast's brain and eventually control it. Two forces with the same goal but with different masters appeared in the brain of the black mosquito beast at the same time. Naturally, they began to fight each other at once, wearing each other down. In the end, the black mosquito beast was the one who benefited. After all, regardless of whether it was Yi Xian's 9th level slave seal or the mental restriction left behind by the great commander of the demon tribe, they were all condensed from the purest source of spiritual energy. Of course, they were unbreakable when they were complete, but as they wore each other down, they turned into the purest source of spirit energy, which eventually merged with the black mosquito's brain. The black mosquito beast took the opportunity to absorb the energy and break through the bottleneck. Everything was so coincidental that the truth couldn't have been realized if any of the factors had been missing. However, it was too late to say anything now. Just as these thoughts quickly flashed through Yi Xian's mind and he understood everything in a short period of time, the black mosquito mother beast, who was giggling on the soft bed in the mosquito nest below, proudly said its thanks as it raised its head to look in the direction Yi Xian was standing. At this moment, Yi Xian clearly had the illusion that he and the mosquito beast were looking at each other. His body shook, and he even suspected that there was a problem with his perfect oscillation skill. Perhaps it was because his mind was shaken that caused the perfect oscillation skill to pause for a very short time, which leaked his aura and was detected by the mosquito beast. Otherwise, why would the black mosquito magical beast suddenly raise its head and look in his direction instead of the other passageways that were densely packed in the nightmare wall? The probability of such a coincidence happening was simply too minuscule. Thinking of this, Yi Xian couldn't help but feel shocked again, and then quickly checked the operation of the perfect oscillation skill. However, he quickly discovered that there was no problem at all. Not a single trace of his aura leaked out. Even when his mind was shaken, the state of the perfect vibration skill did not show any signs of stagnation or even a ripple. Under such circumstances, the mosquito beast shouldn't have discovered him, but it had clearly determined his position. What was the problem? Yi Xian was burning with anxiety, and he didn't move at all. Because if he couldn't find the root of the problem, it would be useless no matter how he tried to escape. The mosquito beast could detect him standing here, but if he escaped somewhere else, would the mosquito beast not be able to detect him? He was simply deceiving himself. You're not bad at all. Knowing that I've already discovered you, you can actually resist running away? Qu'est-ce. I'm starting to admire you more and more. Just as Yi Xian's mind was racing as he quickly analyzed the source of the problem, the black mosquito mother beast once again laughed. I have to say, you little guy are really mysterious. Not only are you able to possess a mental imprint that is even stronger than the mental restriction of the great commander of the demon cultivator tribe, which has the effect of enslaving a mental imprint, you even have this kind of terrifying concealment ability that even a black hole realm cultivator can't detect. This servant is becoming more and more interested in you. You didn't run away because you're trying to figure out where the problem is, right? It's useless. Actually, you're not leaking any aura at all, so the problem isn't with you at all. What's the point of thinking about it? Come down, no matter where you run to, as long as you're in this demon nest, I'll be able to detect you immediately. I've nothing to do, so I've already refined this demon nest. So, all of a sudden, there's a small piece of land that's about 1 meter in diameter. All of a sudden, there's nothing left. Even the black fog that pervades the entire space can't be detected. Tell me, how can I not detect it? At this point, the mother mosquito beast's smiling face suddenly darkened, and it raised its hand to grab Yi Xian from afar. His voice suddenly turned stern at this moment. Stinking brat, get down here right now. Humph, I've never heard of anyone being able to decompose a demon's brain and extract its spiritual origin energy. I really love you to death. Chapter 2679. Translator. Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translations The Only Chance. Upon hearing the mother mosquito beast's words, Yi Xian finally came to a realization, but he smiled bitterly in his heart. Although it was good news that there was no problem with his perfect oscillation, this result was obviously meaningless to Yi Xian. The mother mosquito beast had nothing better to do, so it had refined the entire devil's nest into a magic treasure. Under such circumstances, even if there was no problem with Yi Xian's perfect oscillation, the mother mosquito beast did not need to look for problems with him. It could just sense the abnormality of the magic treasure in the devil's nest and instantly find him. Who could have foreseen this? All of this could only be said to be fate. Perhaps it was fated to be such a disaster. Just as his body was being pulled towards the mosquito nest bed below, it wasn't that Yi Xian hadn't thought of immediately transforming the perfect vibration into an absolute vibration. This way, even if the black mosquito beast trapped him, it would not be so easy to kill Yi Xian. Absolute oscillation represented an absolute defense. Furthermore, it consumed Yi Xian's mental power. As long as Yi Xian had a trace of mental power origin, his absolute oscillation shield would not collapse. Moreover, the mental power source core in his sea of consciousness stored a lot of mental power origin. In addition, the 300 level 3 and level 4 slave seals could be decomposed at any time and turned into pure mental power origin. In that case, he could more or less hold on for a while. However, as soon as this thought flashed through Yi Xian's mind, he immediately gave up. So what if he could hold on for a while? There was no point in it at all. Could he wait for reinforcements to arrive? Or could the mother mosquito beast change its mind? What a joke! At the thought of this, Yi Xian smiled bitterly in his heart. Suddenly, a bold idea slowly emerged from the depths of his mind. After a quick deduction, his heart suddenly pounded. This plan was feasible, and if it succeeded, all of his previous mistakes would be made up for, and everything would return to how it was before. The mother mosquito beast, including the wretched mosquito slayer, would not be able to escape his control in the end. Although the consequences of failure were equally serious, and there was absolutely no chance of survival, Yi Xian had already fallen to this point. What else did he not dare to gamble on? Even if the mother mosquito beast did not want to kill him, what it wanted was the method to decompose Yi Xian's brain core and extract his mental power. How could he possibly give it? That was the power of the devouring system. Not to mention the fact that Yi Xian could not give it up. Even if he could, Yi Xian would not compromise and would rather die. That. Because he'd lost the devouring system, with his current weak strength and the fact that he'd already made so many enemies as soon as he arrived, Yi Xian's final result was still to fall on the path of death. Rather than that, he would rather die with dignity. Thinking of this, Yi Xian immediately dispelled the perfect vibration and revealed himself halfway down. At the same time, he kept all of his treasures into the undying world in his body. As for the 300 level 3 and level 4 slave seals, he threw them all to the devouring system and gave the order to fuse them at full speed. The reason why he did this was partly to protect his treasures and partly to save his own life. Yi Xian believed that the enemy would not be able to detect the treasures that he kept in his undying world. Similarly, the enemy would not be able to detect the treasures that he threw to the devouring system. Even though both the devouring system and the undying world were in his body, even a black hole realm expert would not have the ability to do so. Not to mention forcefully retrieving the treasures, even sensing the existence of the undying world and the devouring system was basically impossible. In other words, the current Yi Xian's body was empty. There was nothing. Under such circumstances, although the enemy knew that something was wrong, as long as Yi Xian did not relent, the enemy would not kill him on the spot no matter how angry he was, in order to obtain the treasures and the method of dissecting the demon's brain to extract mental energy. In this way, Yi Xian would have the opportunity to use the 300 level 3 and level 4 slave seals to fuse a new level 9 slave seal. As long as the second level 9 slave seal was successfully fused, Yi Xian would have the opportunity to turn the tables. What he was fighting for now was this opportunity. This was his only chance of survival. Once he succeeded, all his previous mistakes would not matter anymore. However, if he failed, he would definitely anger the enemy when he attacked again. In order to be safe, the enemy would probably give up on obtaining the treasures and the method of dissecting the demon's brain to extract mental energy from it and kill him in one fell swoop. After all, the spiritual seal left by the great commander of the demon tribe in the demon's brain had been removed. Moreover, the enemy's cultivation had indeed profited from this misfortune and entered the advanced black hole realm. The black mosquito beast was dispensable to Yi Xian's method of dissecting the demon's brain to extract mental energy from it. Obtaining it would at most be the icing on the cake. Even if it did not obtain it, there would not be any serious consequences. It could rush to the 4th level at any time, kill Mount Naibwa, seize the black mosquito bastion, and escape. Of course, with the enemy's terrifying strength as an advanced black hole realm expert, it could actually search Yi Xian's soul. Once the soul was searched, all the secrets could not be hidden and the enemy would know everything. However, if it fell into the hands of a human powerhouse, Yi Xian might be worried about this problem. However, if it was a demon or a beast, Yi Xian did not care at all. This was because there was no such thing as a soul search on the demon's side. Demons did not have a primordial spirit, so how could one search their soul? They didn't have this awareness at all. Yi Xian had long since understood this point. After all, he was worried that he might encounter a high-level devil cultivator. Once the other party was able to search his soul, then he wouldn't be able to keep any secrets. In fact, even if Yi Xian fell into the hands of a human powerhouse, he would not have to worry about this problem. This was because he already had a spiritual source core in his knowledge sea that was unique to demons. Demon scouts moved around the meteorite star core. The reason why human powerhouses could not find any clues about them was because their spiritual source core was so strong that it could block the scanning of human powerhouses. Now, Yi Xian also had the spiritual source core that was unique to demons. Therefore, even if he faced a human black hole realm powerhouse now, he would not have to worry about his soul being searched. This situation should not have existed. How could a mere core realm cultivator boast shamelessly that he was not afraid of a black hole realm powerhouse's forced soul searching? If such words were to spread, people would laugh their heads off. Chapter 2680. I'll be the big one and you'll be the small one. This young man is quite handsome. I wonder how good his skills in bed are. When Yi Xian took the initiative to reveal himself halfway through the fall, the eyes of the female black mosquito that had been looking up suddenly lit up, and a touch of lust burst out. It even expressed its interest in Yi Xian without hiding. This scene made the wretched mosquito slayer clench his fists at the side. His face was full of hostility and resentment, as if a jar of vinegar had been knocked over. Before Yi Xian's body landed on the ground, he felt his stomach churn, and an incomparably absurd feeling welled up in his heart. If it was in the past, he would never have thought that he would one day be judged by this mother mosquito of lust, who was neither human nor beast. More importantly, there was a fellow beside him, whose face was filled with resentment that he had stolen his favor. What the hell was this? Yi Xian's figure finally landed on the soft mosquito nest bed that was 10,000 square meters in size. Then, the damned female mosquito crawled over on all fours. Its seductive face was full of hunger, and saliva was dripping from the corner of its mouth. It was clearly a super-large mosquito, and thick black fog was constantly gushing out of its body. Yi Xian had previously heard from the wretched mosquito butcher that when the female mosquito was in love, it would emit a black mist of courtship. Now, it seemed that after this damned female mosquito saw him, it was actually a little difficult to control its emotions. She wouldn't press him down on the spot, and then without a second word, she would start with XX, right? As this thought flashed through his mind, Yi Xian felt a surge of disgust. He was prepared to self-destruct. Instead of being humiliated by a female mosquito, he would rather self-destruct and explode into a pile of mush. Dear, this kid is very clever. You can't be too careless. It's best if you don't go near him. I'll protect you. Seeing the black fog gushing out of the female mosquito's body and a large amount of it at once, the wretched mosquito slayer's face was full of grief and indignation. He looked like he was very hurt and immediately came forward, showing the look and posture of a loyal protector. "You're just a small satellite state cultivator. Do I need you to protect me? Don't think that I don't know what you're thinking. Get lost." The female black mosquito's face immediately darkened, and she sternly scolded, "You did make me very happy, better than all the others. However, it's not like I didn't give you any benefits. Otherwise, how could you enter the satellite state in just 3 years? You're a demon. You. Calm if you think that I have to give up the entire forest because of you. I don't mind killing you with my own hands." After saying this, the mother mosquito turned its head to look at Yi Xian. The saliva at the corner of its mouth couldn't help but drip down. It swallowed a mouthful of saliva before continuing. "At the very least, with this little fresh meat, you damned old man really don't have much value anymore. If you don't know what's good for you, humph." The wretched mosquito slayer was so angry that he almost vomited blood, but he forced himself to hold it in. He glared at Yi Xian with hatred, as if he wanted to eat him alive. Yi Xian was already numb to it, so he ignored it. At this moment, the female black mosquito raised its right hand and placed it on Yi Xian's forehead. This move almost made Yi Xian self-destruct, but fortunately, he managed to control himself. The female black mosquito's right hand that was placed on his forehead looked no different from a human's right hand. It was obvious that the female black mosquito was evolving into a demon, but even though it had reached the black hole state, its torso was still that of a mosquito. "You don't have any treasures?" When the female black mosquito's right hand touched his forehead, Yi Xian immediately felt a wave of mental energy enter his body. It quickly circulated around his body before it was withdrawn. At this moment, the voice of the mother black mosquito beast sounded out once again, and it revealed a sense of relief. "I was originally worried that you still had that mysterious spiritual brand in your hands, but now it seems, you don't only have one, but you didn't bring it with you at all. Since that's the case, I have nothing to worry about." When he heard this, Yi Xian's heart skipped a beat, but he was also completely relieved. The female black mosquito was a supreme being in the black hole state, so it would never have expected that a mere star core state ant would have an ability or secret technique that could block its probing. Therefore, the mother black mosquito beast only probed once before it ended, and it withdrew its mental power. In fact, it would have been useless even if it probed a few more times. Even Yi Xian's primordial spirit had entered the undying world, so the female black mosquito could only probe a monster core in his sea of consciousness. "All right, you watch over him for me. It's best if you can persuade him so that he'll obey me. If you can do that, humph, seeing that you're still useful, I'll let you be the boss and him be the concubine. It's not impossible." After confirming that Yi Xian no longer had the slave imprint on him, the female black mosquito was obviously completely relieved. It turned to the wretched mosquito slayer and said, "I've just broken through to black hole rank 7, so I need to stabilize my realm. It'll take a few days, so you better put in more effort. Once you're done, I'll wake up and have some fun with you guys. Then I'll go kill Mount Naibwa. When that time comes, you can be the captain of this black mosquito ship." With that, the female black mosquito went to the side. The bed of mosquito nests below rolled and quickly swallowed it up, then it went down to stabilize its realm. After the female black mosquito disappeared, the wretched mosquito slayer's expression was still uncertain. He had been standing at the side thinking about something. However, the resentment toward Yi Xian on his face was obviously fading away. It was obvious that the female black mosquito's last words had worked. The female black mosquito knew him very well and knew that he would be moved. Otherwise, it would not have left Yi Xian here. What if he was killed by the wretched mosquito slayer? In fact, even though the female black mosquito knew what was going on, it was still not at ease, so it extended a wisp of mental power to investigate. At the very least, Yi Xian vaguely sensed it. It was unknown whether the wretched mosquito slayer sensed it, but after hesitating for a while, it finally slowly moved toward Yi Xian. It touched its nose embarrassedly, then awkwardly said to Yi Xian, "Ahem, brother Yi, my dear is actually a good person. It's rare for him to favor you, so why don't you just accept it? Think about it. Previously, you were just a demon pariah in the slums below. If you were to obey my dear, then when I become the captain of the Black Mosquito and give you a position as my deputy, your life would be." Chapter 2681. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation, the second level, 9 Slave Seal, Swish. After confirming that the Black Mosquito Queen's mental power had retreated and was no longer paying attention to him, the wretched mosquito slayer was right in front of him. He was not wary of Yi Xian, and the latter took advantage of his unpreparedness to attack. With an almost imperceptible sound of something breaking through the air, a level 4 slave seal entered a certain part of the wretched mosquito slayer's body and instantly drilled in. You little! The wretched mosquito slayer was stunned, and then he flew into a rage. He had been so careless because the Black Mosquito Queen had already checked Yi Xian's body and confirmed that there was no more slave seal in his body. Who would have thought that a supreme being at the black hole state would make a mistake while inspecting a star core state ant? Besides, the black mosquito beast had no reason to lie to him about this. Therefore, the wretched mosquito slayer did not expect Yi Xian to have the ability to counterattack, so he fell for the trap immediately. At this moment, as the level 4 slave seal entered his body, it took control of his monster core almost instantly. After all, a level 3 slave seal was enough to deal with the wretched mosquito slayer. However, to be safe and to avoid being discovered by the Black Mosquito Queen for too long, Yi Xian directly used a level 4 slave seal. The effect was obvious. The wretched mosquito slayer only uttered 2 words in his rage, and then he fell silent. His eyes were filled with confusion at first, but then they gradually became clear. In just 30 seconds, the wretched mosquito slayer stood respectfully beside Yi Xian as if he was a completely different person. He did not say a word, as if he was waiting for orders. This is how it should be after being controlled. Yi Xian secretly heaved a sigh of relief. As he carefully paid attention to the spiritual energy fluctuations in his surroundings, he instructed in a low voice. For the time being, you don't have to treat me as your master. How are you usually? How are you now? I don't think I need to teach you this. This order will be effective until my next order appears. Just as Yi Xian finished speaking, the wretched mosquito slayer turned around and walked to the side, falling asleep. It seemed that after this fellow was troubled by the black mosquito mother beast, he would most likely fall asleep. However, this was good. Yi Xian could calm down and focus on condensing a new level, 9 slave seal. Previously, he had used 200 level 3 slave seals to condense 100 level 4 slave seals. Now, he was going to use these 100 level 4 slave marks. Of course, he had used one of them on the Whist Mosquito Slayer, so he was only left with 99 level 4 slave marks. But that was enough. 2 or 4 marks, to make a level 5. 2 level 5 marks, to make a level 6. And so on and so forth. Only 32 level 4 slave seals were needed to form a level 9 slave seal. After success, Yi Xian would have 67 of these level 4 slave seals left. However, although it was easy to say, this process required a certain amount of time. Fortunately, the Black Mosquito Queen needed a few days to consolidate its realm. However, Yi Xian did not need such a long time to condense a level 9 slave seal using 32 level 4 slave seals. It could be done in about 2 days. The entire process went smoothly. 2 days later, Yi Xian had another level 9 slave seal in his hands. His originally worried heart was finally completely at ease. At this point, the Black Mosquito Queen still had not come out of seclusion. It would probably take about 2 more days. At this time, if Yi Xian had asked the Whist Mosquito Slayer to take him away, the 2 of them would most likely be able to escape. However, that was obviously impossible. In order to be safe, Yi Xian decided to condense another level 9 slave seal. As for the one he condensed before, he secretly gave it to the wretched mosquito butcher and gave it to him in such a manner. The reason for this was to create a double insurance. Anyway, he would still need another level 9 slave seal to deal with that guy at Mount Naibwa. What he was doing now was not useless. Of the remaining 67 level 4 slave seals, 32 were taken out by Yi Xian. There were 35 remaining, and there were still 200 level 3 slave seals. In the next 2 days, Yi Xian successfully condensed the 3rd level 9 slave seal. He kept this one with him. After doing all this, he stopped condensing all the other slave seals. This was because it was enough. After all, it was a loss to condense all the other slave seals. He felt a little heartache. Thus, he kept all the other slave seals in his undying world. He only left one level 9 slave seal in the spirit source core in his mind. Now, all he had to do was wait. While waiting, Yi Xian was burning with anxiety. Calculating the time, he had already been in the demon's nest for 4 days, and half of the 8 days had already passed. If he didn't hurry up, then Mount Naibwa would discover the abnormality on the 2nd floor. At that time, the 2,000-man demon slave armies that Yi Xian had subdued would all be annihilated, and that guy from Mount Naibwa would also become vigilant because of this. Even if the Black Mosquito Queen appeared now and was subdued, the remaining time would be very tight. After all, they still had to deal with the large number of demon elites on the 3rd floor. Even with the help of the subdued Black Mosquito Queen, the demon elites in the machinery area were very alert. Once they made a move, any one of them could immediately warn them. Therefore, this segment actually required time to think of a way to deal with it. Calculating in this way, only 4 days was really a tight schedule. What's more, the Black Mosquito magical beast hadn't appeared yet. If it delayed for another 2 days, it would really be a big mess. With this thought in mind, Yi Xian was so anxious that he almost wanted to send the wretched mosquito slayer to the Black Mosquito Queen's seclusion area to hurry it up. However, that was obviously impossible. If he really did that, he was afraid that the other party would immediately become suspicious. When that time came, everything would really be over. These thoughts flashed through Yi Xian's mind. He was burning with anxiety, but he did not have the slightest idea. He could only accept his fate and wait patiently. Fortunately, the Black Mosquito Queen did not disappoint him too much. Although it had taken half a day for the Black Mosquito Queen to come out of seclusion, it was only half a day. For Yi Xian, it was basically acceptable. At this moment, with the Black Mosquito Queen coming out of seclusion, for Yi Xian, the urgency of time and so on were almost immediately thrown to the back of his mind. Right now, the most important thing was to attack and subdue the Black Mosquito Mother Beast. If this could not be done, everything else would be for naught, and there would be no meaning to it.
How is it? Did he agree?
Just as Yi Xian's heart was tightening, the Black Mosquito Queen had slowly walked over. Chapter 2682. Translator, Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translations returned to the 3rd level. The mosquito slayer's face fell when he heard the mother mosquito's question. He stood to one side, embarrassed. It was obvious what he meant. Trash. The mother mosquito's expression darkened. It turned to glare at the wretched mosquito slayer, then turned its attention back to Yi Xian. Obviously, it did not see anything unusual about the wretched mosquito slayer. On the one hand, it was because he was following Yi Xian's orders and was behaving as usual. Even if there were some differences, they were very weak. On the other hand, the mother mosquito's attention was completely focused on Yi Xian. Before it went into seclusion, it had said that it would have a threesome with Yi Xian and the wretched mosquito slayer after it came out. Once it was done, it would deal with the leader of the Black Mosquito Bastion, Naboshan. Given the mother mosquito's lustful nature, it had probably thought about this many times during its seclusion. Now that it was out, it was naturally thinking about this matter. How could it have the energy to pay attention to the wretched mosquito slayer's actions? On the other hand, the latter just shrugged his shoulders and didn't say much at all. This also prevented him from speaking too much and making a mistake. In short, at least for now, the wretched mosquito slayer had successfully fooled the mother mosquito. Now, all Yi Xian needed to do was cover for him. Indeed, from the beginning, Yi Xian had never thought that he would be the main force in subduing the mother mosquito. After all, the mother mosquito was a supreme being in the black hole realm. Even though it had checked Yi Xian's body and confirmed that there was nothing in it, Yi Xian's previous performance was very unusual. Whether it was the perfect oscillation or the 9th level slave seal, they were not things that a core realm ant should be capable of. From this point of view, it was not completely unacceptable that he had the means to fool a supreme being in the black hole realm. If Yi Xian could think of this, how could the black hole realm mother mosquito not think of it? In other words, although the mother mosquito appeared to be carefree on the surface, it was likely that she had always been on guard against him. In this sort of situation, if Yi Xian were to place all his hopes on himself, then he would truly be courting death. The mother mosquito was approaching him with an unfriendly expression. From the looks of it, if she was not going to kill him, then she was going to use some kind of force to get rid of him. With a chill, Yi Xian thought hard. Of course, he did not hesitate. He sent a dozen psychic wind blades of wind at once. Of course, one of these wind blades contained a 9th level slave seal. However, on the surface, Yi Xian still pretended to be unafraid of death and would rather die than submit. Even though he knew that the other party could see through him with a single glance, this kind of disguise was actually part of his plan. He had deliberately followed the other party's guesses and did all this. Humph, you're quite good at acting. You look like you'd rather die than submit to me. It's as if you're desperate. You know that these low-level psychic wind blades are useless against me, but you still want to fight to the death. Sure enough, the mother mosquito sneered when it saw Yi Xian thought art of war. Its face was full of disdain as it mocked. You're just an ant in the core realm. How dare you play such a trick on me, a supreme being in the black hole realm? You really don't know what's good for you. Let me guess, which wind blade is your spiritual imprint in?
This one? No. Then this one? Ha! No.
If that's the case, it must be this one. As the black mosquito mother beast spoke, it pointed its right hand into the distance from time to time. Each time it pointed, a spiritual wind blade would crumble halfway through. However, after trying a few times, it did not find anything. I don't believe that you're not playing any tricks. Humph, it must be this one. With a cold snort, the black mosquito mother beast raised its hand and pointed again. This time, the spirit wind blade that was slightly behind was dispersed by its finger. Then, a wisp of purplish-black spirit imprint was revealed. It did not disperse with the collapse of the spirit wind blade surrounding it. After all, it was a level 9 slave imprint. It would not disperse so easily. Ha ha ha. Sure enough, it seems that everything is as I have guessed. Kid, you really do have a big secret on you. Even my investigation was deceived. This time, the mother mosquito finally found evidence to prove its conjecture. It immediately laughed with a smug look on its face. It was also at this moment that the wretched mosquito slayer, who had been standing behind him less than a meter away, suddenly raised his hand and silently slapped the female mosquito's back. His cultivation was only at the satellite state, so naturally, he could not hurt a supreme being in the black hole dimension. However, as the wretched mosquito butcher slapped down with his palm, the level 9 slave seal that Yi Xian handed over to him instantly entered the body of the black mosquito mother beast. Moreover, it immediately surged towards the magic core in its brain. You! The mother mosquito trembled violently, and its eyes widened in disbelief. It spat out a word and seemed to want to turn around and look at the wretched mosquito slayer. However, it did not have the chance to do so. Just as his body was halfway through turning, a thick sense of confusion appeared in his eyes. Obviously, the level 9 slave imprint had invaded the demon core in its brain and was rapidly eroding and controlling its consciousness. In an instant, the mother mosquito stood there in a daze. It was like a robot that had run out of electricity, and it did not move at all. Phew! I finally did it. I'll be able to return to the 3rd level soon. There's still time. Seeing this, Yi Xian's heart, which had been in his throat, finally fell back into his chest. As he muttered to himself in relief, he raised his hand and retrieved the level 9 slave imprint, which was wrapped in a psychic wind blade, into his body. After checking and confirming that the slave imprint was not damaged and that its structure was as stable as before, Yi Xian grinned and turned to look at the wretched mosquito slayer, who was standing respectfully beside him. Although I really hate you, I won't kill you humanely for the time being since you've made a great contribution this time. Perform well in the future, and perhaps one day I'll make you the captain of this black mosquito bastion. It's not entirely impossible. After he finished speaking, Yi Xian waited quietly. He knew that it would take at least a few minutes for the mother mosquito to be completely controlled. Chapter 2683. Everything plundered. Time passed by slowly. Unknowingly, nearly 10 minutes had passed. During this entire process, the female black mosquito beast stood there quietly with a perplexed look in its eyes. It was as if its soul had wandered into the void. It did not feel like its consciousness still existed in this world at all. This was a normal phenomenon. Yi Xian was already familiar with it, so he felt at ease and did not feel uneasy. Similarly, the wretched mosquito slayer stood respectfully at the side. If Yi Xian did not speak, he would not take the initiative to speak. This was the same as the normal demon slave. Previously, this fellow had wanted to act but failed. Instead, the more it acted, the more it did not seem like it. In the end, it finally aroused Yi Xian's suspicion. Thinking about it now, it really made one sigh. As for Yi Xian, he waited quietly at the side. He knew that there would not be any more accidents this time, so he was not anxious.
Master.
Black Mosquito Beast greets you. Just as Yi Xian was taking advantage of this opportunity to think about how everything would unfold after returning to the third floor, a delicate yet slightly timid voice finally sounded from behind him. From the voice, it was clearly the female Black Mosquito Beast, but the feeling was completely different. If the female Black Mosquito Beast was described as a shrewish woman before, then now, its voice sounded like a shy girl next door. It was so pure that it was refreshing. Female Mosquito Beast? Refreshing girl next door? As these two completely different images appeared in his mind, Yi Xian shuddered. His entire body felt unwell. He had a feeling that there was something wrong with his mind recently. Otherwise, why would he be so suspicious of his own mind? With this suspicion, Yi Xian turned around and coincidentally met the gaze of the female Black Mosquito Beast. What shocked Yi Xian was that the female Black Mosquito Beast actually blushed at first sight and lowered its head shyly. However, its eyes were filled with joy. This kind of behavior was clearly the feeling of a young girl who was yearning for love, and her sweetheart looked at each other, and then hurriedly nodded her head. This time, Yi Xian felt really bad. He even suspected that this female mosquito was faking it like the wretched mosquito slayer from before. It was said that birds of a feather flock together. These two fellows were originally jackals of the same tribe. If the wretched mosquito butcher could do it, why couldn't the female mosquito butcher do it? However, as soon as this idea popped into his head, Yi Xian immediately rejected it. Because that was impossible no matter what. The wretched mosquito slayer had done that because he had some ulterior motives. However, this female mosquito really didn't exist anymore. Even if it had ulterior motives, it could have used a more direct method. For an existence with a supreme cultivation base at the Black Hole Realm, was there a need to do this? Of course, more importantly, Yi Xian had confidence in the Grade 9 slave seal. Previously, he had failed on the wretched mosquito butcher because he didn't understand the attribute of the slave seal. However, now that he understood, he definitely wouldn't make the same mistake again. Thinking of this, Yi Xian immediately made up his mind. He coldly glanced at the female black mosquito and said, "From now on, you have to follow me out of this demon nest. Black Mosquito is your real name, so I can't change it arbitrarily. You can call yourself Black Mosquito in private, but it's not very convenient in front of others. There's a risk of your identity being exposed, so, in front of others, you'll be called Lee Mosquito. Also, you have to conceal your cultivation base. Just like the mosquito butcher, you'll be in the satellite state. Of course, the most important thing is your appearance. You haven't fully transformed, but fortunately, your head and limbs are no different from a demon's. The only thing missing is your main body. This is easy to solve. Just put on some clothes and cover yourself up. This way, no one will be able to see your body. The only problem is the mosquito wings on your back. Can you put them away?" "Yes, Master. These are all small problems. Lee Mosquito can solve them with a wave of my hand." Hearing Yi Xian's words, the black mosquito mother beast nodded with a very obedient expression. Immediately after, she didn't take out her clothes or anything like that. With just a wave of her hand, the originally naked mosquito beast's black body was bound by a light purple tight suit. From the outside, it looked like a human or demon woman with a fiery figure and a seductive appearance. Even the pair of black mosquito wings on her back were absorbed into her body. At the same time, her cultivation base was concealed to the satellite state according to Yi Xian's instructions. However, she was a level 9 satellite state, which was much more powerful than the wretched mosquito butcher who was a level 4 satellite state. In this way, Yi Xian, the wretched mosquito butcher, and the female black mosquito. No, she should be called Lee Mosquito now. When the three of them stood together, it was impossible to tell that there was a black hole state female black mosquito among them. They were all demons. The only strange thing was that the wretched mosquito butcher and Lee Mosquito, who were both satellite states, were extremely respectful to Yi Xian, who was only a core state. It was unbelievable. Very good. Yi Xian was extremely satisfied with Lee Mosquito's actions. As a result, he could boldly bring it out with him. With the help of this level 7 black hole state female black mosquito, it would be much easier for him to sweep through the third level. At this thought, Yi Xian couldn't help but soften his tone. He looked at Lee Mosquito and said, "We're about to leave this place. Our target is the third level of the Black Mosquito Bastion. If there are no accidents, I'm afraid we won't be back for a while. If you have any treasures in this demon nest, it's best if you take them out now and take them with you. Yi Xian asked because he was a little curious. His opponent was a black hole state supreme being, so surely she would have some treasures that would surprise him? Now that he was the master, if there was anything he wanted, Yi Xian wouldn't be polite and would take it away immediately. However, what surprised him was that after hearing Yi Xian's words, the black mosquito mother beast shook her head without the slightest hesitation. Master, the mosquito mother beast doesn't even have an ordinary star core origin, let alone other treasures. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been unable to break through all these years. When she was captured, all the cultivation resources were taken away. Yi Xian was very surprised by this, but after a moment's thought, he understood. If that wasn't the case, the female black mosquito wouldn't have been so bored as to refine the entire demon nest into its own treasure. She had neither cultivation resources nor treasures that could be used to nourish her body. Only someone who was extremely bored would do such a thing. In a way, it was the commander of the demon tribe who had taken away its treasures that had almost caused Yi Xian to fail. Chapter 2684. Translator, Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translations. There was no time to lose. Yi Xian still had 200 rank 3 slave seals, 35 rank 4 slave seals, and 1 rank 9 slave seal. A rank 9 slave seal was meant to deal with Naboshan, a black hole realm elite. But they couldn't kill all of the demonkin elites below Mount Naibwa. Just the third floor alone required at least 200 demonkin elites to keep the Black Mosquito Bastion running. If they couldn't kill them all, then it would be pointless to try to steal a bastion that couldn't function. The 200 rank 3 slave seals he had were meant for these 200 elite demons to keep the Black Mosquito Bastion running. Rank 3 slave seals could control demons at the satellite realm. 200 satellite realm elites were more than enough to keep the third-level engine room running. In that case, there were only 35 fourth-rank slave seals left. Since Naboshan couldn't be killed right away, there was still a leader above him who commanded 10 demonkin bastions. Naboshan was one of his subordinates. If Naboshan died, the Black Mosquito would be in great danger before it could leave the domain of the falling stars. Since that was the case, Naboshan should have some guards around him, right? These 35 rank 4 slave seals were meant for this group of guards to keep up appearances. A rank 4 slave seal could control demons at the planet realm of the fourth realm. It was considered strong. 35 planet realm elites were enough to keep up appearances in certain situations. Of course, there would be other demons in the Black Mosquito Bastion whose strength was between the planet realm and the black hole realm. Although there weren't many of them, they definitely existed. However, Yi Xian didn't plan to keep them around. If he encountered any, he would kill them all. After all, the Black Mosquito Bastion was important, but to Yi Xian, it was an external object. To him, the most important thing was his own cultivation. The higher the realm of an elite demon, the stronger and purer the spiritual origin power contained in its brain core. Obtaining a high-level demon's brain core was extremely important to Yi Xian's cultivation. Although the special spiritual origin core in his brain didn't seem to have much to do with the human cultivation system, Yi Xian believed that once he reached a certain level, the two would have something in common. When that time came, Yi Xian's cultivation would experience a qualitative leap because of the demon's brain core in his brain. In fact, this effect was already manifested. Although he was only at the core realm level 8, because of the existence of the spiritual origin core in his sea of knowledge, he could easily kill a core realm level 9 being. After all, he was a freak who combined the consciousness and spiritual power of both human and demon cultivators. He couldn't be measured by common sense. Before stepping out of the portal leading to the demon nests, Yi Xian had already issued orders to Li Mosquito and the wretched Mosquito Slayer. In short, 200 satellite realm demon elites were to be left behind. 35 planet realm demon elites were to be left behind. Once this number was reached, the rest were to be killed and their brains dissected for their cores. As for the corpses, they were to be left for Yi Xian to use the demonic blood star essence sword to absorb their flesh and blood essence. This had always been done this way. When Barker led the demon slaves to guard the central hall on the second floor, the corpses of the demon scouts were all piled up together for Yi Xian to use the demonic blood star essence sword to absorb their flesh and blood essence. It was also because of this reason that after absorbing a large amount of demon flesh and blood essence, the demonic blood star essence sword, which had completed its fourth fusion, had become more and more bloody and murderous. What Yi Xian didn't expect was that when he led the wretched Mosquito Slayer and Li Mosquito out of the portal on the left that led to the demon nests, He turned around and saw a figure who had just walked out of the portal in the middle. The portal in the middle led to the 4th floor above. This guy's cultivation wasn't weak. He was actually a star-grade powerhouse at the 5th level. At this moment, he had just stepped out of the portal in the middle when he sensed the movement beside him and subconsciously turned around to look. Then, his expression changed and he immediately exclaimed, "Mosquito Slayer? These two are... That woman is Black Mosquito? How dare you?" His expression changed drastically as he turned around and retreated to the portal behind him. However, the moment he stepped out, the black light film in the portal in the middle dissipated. If he wanted to use it now, he had to reactivate it. This delay also allowed Li Mosquito, who was behind Yi Xian, to appear behind this person in a flash. She raised her hand and the demon quietly fell to the ground. His head was cut open, and a black demon core fell into Li Mosquito's hand, which she handed to Yi Xian. A star-grade powerhouse at the 5th level was gone in the blink of an eye. This scene made even Yi Xian a little unable to accept it for a moment. He stood there in a daze, his heart beating wildly. It wasn't until now that he deeply realized how lucky he was to be able to subdue Black Mosquito Slayer. After receiving the level 5 demon core, Yi Xian directly threw it to the devouring system in his body. The system immediately began to decompose it and extract the essence of the demon's spiritual origin power. Then, he flipped his hand and took out the demonic Bloodstar Essence sword and directly slashed at the elite demon on the ground. Chi! A soft sound like ripping silk was heard, and the elite demon's corpse withered visibly. In the blink of an eye, it had turned into a withered corpse. Apart from the spiritual origin power in his body, all the essence of his flesh and blood was absorbed by Yi Xian's demonic Bloodstar Essence sword. After all, this was all the flesh and blood essence of a star-grade powerhouse at the 5th level. Yi Xian even had an illusion that the demonic Bloodstar Essence sword in his hand seemed to be cheering as if it had eaten to its heart's content. This person is a confidant of Naboshan. In the entire Black Mosquito Fortress, his position is equivalent to the chief steward. Generally speaking, if there are any problems in the lower 3 levels, he will come over to deal with them. At this time, the wretched Mosquito Slayer's voice was also heard. Yi Xian's body trembled, and his face immediately turned gloomy. He had a premonition that the sharp decrease in the number of demon scouts entering and leaving the Black Mosquito Fortress had attracted the attention of the higher-ups. Although this person had now appeared on the 3rd level, this was obviously just a transition. He had passed through the 3rd level, and his destination was ultimately the 2nd level below. Fortunately, he had returned in time. Otherwise, if he had been a few hours later and this person had returned from the 2nd level to the 4th level, the whole matter would have been exposed in advance. Chapter 2685. A sea of cultivation resources. After storing the corpse of his trusted aide in his undying world, Yi Xian led Li Mosquito and the wretched Mosquito Slayer to the 3rd level of the warehouse. The area was vast, but it was more enclosed than the outside. It was an independent system. 200 Demonkin elites were permanently stationed here, and there were resource warehouses, daily supplies warehouses, and energy warehouses. The storehouse was filled with the planet's core and other treasures that the 10,000 Demonkin scouts had excavated from the outside world. The storehouse was filled with cultivation resources that were distributed to the Demonkin scouts, a type of black ore that contained a mysterious energy that could be extracted and converted into psychic power. Of course, these resources were of a lower level, and Yi Xian didn't care for them. Compared to using Demonkin brain cores to cultivate, they were much slower. The power supply warehouse was where the Black Mosquito Bastion's daily operations were stored. Everything was stored here, including the defensive shields, attack systems, and the like. The warehouse wasn't a place anyone could enter as they wished, and this was where the wretched Mosquito Slayer's usefulness came into play. It was shameless, and in the end the guards were so infuriated that they opened the door. They wanted to chase it away, but Yi Xian placed a slave seal on them. These guards were all Satellite Realm elites, so Yi Xian had placed a 3rd-rank slave seal on them. After instantly subduing the guards of the warehouse area, the rest of the matter was much easier to handle. Yi Xian directly had these guys issue a summon order to all the demon storage staff in the large area. He said that someone from above had come to investigate and told them to gather at the entrance of the warehouse area. As such, aside from a few important warehouse workers in the resource warehouse who couldn't leave, almost all of the other devilish warehouse workers had arrived. Once all 200 of them had gathered, Yi Xian ordered Li Mosquito, who was hiding at the side, to kill them all. The Black Hole Realm expert killed more than half of them without much effort. Of the 200 Demonkin guards, Yi Xian only kept 20 satellite realm experts. After all, the warehouse needed to function normally, but the Demonkin's management was a little too weak. 20 satellite realm experts were more than enough to manage the warehouse. After throwing all the demon cores to the devouring system, Yi Xian immediately took out the demonic blood essence sword and absorbed the essence of the other 100 or so satellite realm demonkin elites. After drinking to his heart's content, the demonic blood essence sword became more and more cheerful. Yi Xian had a premonition that this superb offensive treasure that had undergone 4 levels of fusion was going to undergo some unknown changes. After doing all this, the 3 of them were led by several elite demonkin realm demonkin elites to the warehouse's core area. There were 2 senior planet realm demonkin guards there. They weren't allowed to leave even for a moment because the items they were looking after were too important. They were the core sources that the Black Mosquito Bastion's 10,000 demonkin scouts had handed in over the years, as well as other treasures, rare minerals and the like. As for the entire 3rd floor's warehouse area, Yi Xian wasn't interested in the other ordinary supplies or the energy required to operate the space fortress. The only things he was interested in were the core sources, rare minerals, and treasures the demonkin had collected. He was destined to loot these 2 warehouses. The 2 high-level storekeepers at the planet realm were quickly killed by the mosquito. After Yi Xian collected the magic core and extracted the essence of its flesh and blood, he first walked into the first large warehouse that was used to store all sorts of rare minerals and star core origins. Almost in the next instant, the notifications from the devouring system rang crazily in his mind. Ding! Congratulations to the host! 1 cubic meter of 9-colored star core discovered. Grade: Star rank legendary mineral. Ding! Congratulations to the host! 3 star tier crystals discovered. Grade: Star rank epic mineral. Ding! Congratulations to the host! Indestructible void metal discovered. Grade: Star rank precious mineral. Yi Xian was stunned when he heard the notifications in his mind. Generally speaking, there were 3 types of star-rank treasures and minerals in the context of the stars: ordinary, supreme, and supreme. Above these 3, there were actually 3 more types. However, they were basically rare, so they were usually not mentioned under normal circumstances. They were respectively legendary, epic, and supreme treasure. The 8th grade black star core and the 9th grade 9-colored star core were only legendary rank treasures. As for Yi Xian's purple star shuttle, the Devil Blood Star Essence Sword, and the Purple Phoenix Glass Armor, even though they had already been fused 4 times, they could only be considered to be of the highest quality. From this, it could be seen how precious epic grade ores and treasures were. There was no need to even mention the true treasure level, which was above the epic level. So far, Yi Xian had only obtained 1 incomplete precious rank treasure and 1 incomplete epic rank treasure. The incomplete precious rank treasure was the Void Dimension Fragment, and the incomplete epic rank treasure was the fragment of the Immortal Star Superbrain. Who would have thought that he would actually obtain 3 epic star tier crystals and a piece of indestructible void metal? This was a huge surprise. In comparison, the 1 cubic meter of 9-colored star core was completely ignored by Yi Xian. Of course, there were still a lot of good things in this warehouse. Most of them were star core sources and various rare minerals. Yi Xian did not hesitate and kept 60% of them into his undying world, piling them up into several small mountains. The reason why he said 60% was because the remaining 40% was not enough for him. Most of them were level 2 and level 3 planetary core sources, as well as some top-grade ores. He had to leave some for the Black Mosquito Bastion. After all, if he had to deal with Bastion Commander Ba Chai in the future, he had to give something up. With that done, Yi Xian made his way to the warehouse across from him. Unlike the previous star core origin and mineral storage, the things stored here were all magic treasures. They were either obtained by killing people in the outside world, or picked up from some planets, or obtained from some cave residences and relics. After all, tens of thousands of demon dweller scouts were active in this star field all year round. Some of the immortal caves of the predecessors on the stars basically could not escape their search. As soon as he entered the warehouse, the devouring system notification sounded out in his mind once again. It was all a good notification. Yi Xian was stunned once again. Ding! Congratulations to the host. Banners discovered. Grade: Legendary Astral Treasure. Ding! Congratulations to the host. Wormhole Warship discovered. Grade: Epic Astral Warship.
Ding!
Congratulations to the host. Rai D. Seal discovered. Grade: Ultimate Treasure Origin Treasure. Chapter 2686. Translator, Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios Erosion Living Area Soul Subduing Banner. As the name suggests, it is a soul-type magic treasure. It is a legendary starry sky treasure. Wormhole Ship. Generally speaking, only large star-class battleships or space fortresses can perform wormhole jumps between universe planes. A 3,000-meter-long planet-class battleship like the Federation's 3,000-meter-long planet-class battleship will definitely not be able to withstand it. A small private battleship less than 1,000 meters long is even more impossible. Wormhole Ship is a private battleship that can withstand wormhole jumps. It is said that in the entire Empire, only a group of technical elites from the machinery race under Imperial Preceptor D. Air can build this. Of course, DE of the Tianji race can build it too. Because this small private battleship can allow cultivators to perform wormhole jumps between universe planes, both the Wan Luo Federation and the Tianji race have very strict control over it. It is basically impossible for it to be leaked. Who would have thought that they would encounter one here? As for the final Lightning Emperor seal, this seal was a natural origin treasure nurtured by the heavens and earth. It was born in a star domain shrouded in boundless lightning. It was a treasure nurtured by the boundless lightning of that star domain. It was the origin of the great Tao of lightning in the universe, and it controlled the boundless lightning in the void of the galaxy. However, with Yi Xian's current ability, it is impossible for him to refine this origin treasure. Not to mention him, even the black hole realm Li Mosquito might not be able to do it. Therefore, after Yi Xian kept it, he directly threw it into his undying world. He will only use it when his cultivation level increases. Other than these three legendary starry sky treasures, there are many other magic treasures. Similarly, Yi Xian collected about 60% of the magic treasures that he was interested in, which is more than 10,000 magic treasures. The remaining 40% is left in the warehouse to deal with Ba Chai in the future. In less than 2 hours, the warehouse area of the third level was cleared out. Everything seemed to be going smoothly, but in fact, among the 3 areas of the third level, this warehouse area is the least likely to have any accidents. Therefore, Yi Xian did not relax at all. There is not much suspense in the following areas of the living area, but it is hard to guarantee that there will be no accidents in the last area, the machinery area. After leaving the warehouse area, Yi Xian immediately brought Li Mosquito and the wretched mosquito slayer to the living area. Coincidentally, they met 2 satellite realm demon elites outside of the living area. Yi Xian immediately used 2 grade 3 slave seals to subdue them and started interrogating them. The surprise came too quickly. It turned out that today was the day when the 200 or so demon elites in the living area would switch shifts with the 200 or so demon elites in the engine room. There were still 4 hours left. In other words, if Yi Xian was able to subdue all of the demon cultivator elites that had been resting in the living area for 3 days within 4 hours, then he would be able to effortlessly take over the engine room after 4 hours. At that time, the only thing left to do was to kill the 200 or so demon elites that had returned to the living quarters after their shift had been changed. At this point, the entire third level is swept clean. Due to the urgency of time, Yi Xian, Li Mosquito, and the wretched mosquito slayer immediately took action. They quickly invaded the villas and caves, and in less than 2 hours, all the 210 demon elites in the entire living area were killed. Most of them were satellite realm experts, and there were also some meteor realm demon elites. There were even planet realm demon elites, but they were all killed by Yi Xian's orders. Because he did not have enough slave seals. 35 level 4 slave seals and 1 level 9 slave seal were prepared for Naboshan and his 35 personal guards. As for the remaining 200 level 3 slave seals, 25 of them were used in the warehouse. Now, there were only 175 left. Therefore, out of the 210 elite demons, they could only kill 30 or so of them. Fortunately, they explained that they only needed 130 demon elites to control the entire machinery area. The 100 or so demon elites that were usually present were actually taking shifts in the machinery area. Now, Yi Xian had more than 40 demon slaves, enough for them to take small shifts. He was not afraid that these demon slaves, who would help him in the future, would die of exhaustion. In less than 2 hours, Yi Xian had only 36 slave seals left, and the entire third-level living area was unknowingly taken over by him. Although everything looked normal on the surface, in reality, this area was already Yi Xian's world. At this point, Only the 210 demon elites were left to be dealt with. Once they were all killed, only the 4th level of the Black Mosquito Bastion was left. Under Yi Xian's orders, the 175 demon slaves left the living area in batches and headed for the machinery area. Every time a batch of demonic slaves left, an equal number of demonic slaves would come out of the machinery area and enter the living area. Under these circumstances, Li Mosquito had no need to hesitate. She acted immediately and killed them all. All Yi Xian needed to do was take the Devil Cultivator's brain core from its hands, take out the Devil Blood Star Essence sword, and absorb all the flesh and blood essence from the corpses of the Devil Cultivator elites. Then, with a wave of his hand, he stored the remaining withered corpses into the undying world within his body. Time passed slowly. Before they knew it, another 2 hours had passed. As batch after batch of demon slaves entered the engine room, they were exchanged for batch after batch of demon elites. Until now, after more than 10 times in a row, the entire engine room had undergone a huge change. All of the demon elites inside had come out, and the ones controlling the engine room were all Yi Xian's demon slaves. As for the devil elite that came out of the building, other than the 2 planet realm managers who were subdued by Yi Xian using 2 level 4 slave seals, the rest were all killed. At this point, the entire 3rd level had been swept clean. In addition to a large amount of cultivation resources and treasures, Yi Xian had also obtained several hundred demon brain cores. He had fed them to the devouring system so that it could rapidly decompose them and extract the pure spiritual energy contained within. In addition, his demon blood star essence had also absorbed a large amount of demon blood essence. Its bloodthirsty and nimble feeling had grown stronger. Yi Xian even had an illusion that this supreme-grade offensive magic treasure was about to give birth to a sword spirit. If that was the case, its quality would instantly increase from the supreme grade to a legendary-grade offensive magic treasure. But right now, Yi Xian didn't have the mood to pay too much attention to this, because to him, there was still a more important and final link that needed to be completed. That was to sweep through the 4th level and subdue Mount Naibua. The chief and deputy chief manager of the 3rd floor's engine room that he had left behind, and used 2 level 4 slave seals to subdue were the preparations he had to make to achieve this last step. Chapter 2687. Translator, Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translations entering the 4th level in the entire 3rd level. The only people who could activate the portal in the middle of the small square and enter the 4th level were the 2 planet-grade managers of the machinery area. They were called Two-Way and Delay. Thanks to Two-Way and Delay, Yi Xian quickly understood the situation on the 4th level of the Black Mosquito Bastion. The 4th level of the Black Mosquito Bastion was the most powerful force in the entire Black Mosquito Bastion. There were only 181 demons, including the leader, Naboshan. The core of these 181 demons was Naboshan, his 50 elite guards, his 5 trusted advisors, and his 5 trusted stewards. The other 120 people were all demon slaves who served Naboshan. Among these 120 people, 60 of them were beautiful demon slave maids. The other 60 were demon slaves who served the daily life of Mount Naibua and enjoyed luxurious daily life, including the so-called kitchen slaves who were good at making all kinds of delicious food and wine. It could be said that these 120 demonic slaves were all high-level slaves. Most of their cultivation bases were around the satellite realm. After learning about this situation, Yi Xian immediately gave orders to the wretched mosquito killer and Li Mosquito. There was no need to deal with these 120 demon slaves of Naboshan. After Naboshan was dealt with, they would definitely not dare to act rashly. After Yi Xian dealt with everything, he would refine 120 level 3 slave seals and subdue them. After all, the 4th level couldn't lack such talents. Otherwise, wouldn't they be exposed on the spot if they didn't even have high-level slave maids and high-level demon slaves when they came in contact with the other higher-ups of the Space Fortress? In other words, the only people they had to deal with on the 3rd level were Naboshan, his 50 guards, 5 trusted advisors and 5 trusted butlers. This was because one of them had already been killed. There were only 60 high-level demons in total. It didn't seem like a lot, but these 60 people were extremely difficult to deal with. The 50 guards were all 4th-grade planet-grade beings. Yi Xian still had 33 level 4 slave seals, so he could deal with more than half of them. As for the remaining 17, he just had to kill them. As for Naboshan, his cultivation level was at the 4th level of the Black Hole Realm. He had just entered the middle level of the Black Hole Realm and was 3 levels lower than Li Jing. Of course, at that time, Yi Xian would use perfect oscillation to hide at the side and watch the opportunity to plant the level 9 slave seal on him. The key was the 5 trusted advisors of Mount Naibwa and the 4 trusted butlers. These 9 were all planetesimals of the 5th rank of the starry sky. Planetesimals. What's more, they were indispensable to the Black Mosquito Bastion. Even if Yi Xian didn't stay behind, at least one of his advisors and stewards had to be left behind. Otherwise, the entire Black Mosquito Bastion would be difficult to manage in the future. It just so happened that Yi Xian had underestimated the need for this and did not have a level 5 slave seal on hand. Forget it. 33 personal guards. I'll take in 3 less. I'll just keep 3. After pondering for a while, Yi Xian made a decision. This way, there will be 3 free level 4 slave seals. I just need to refine 1 more level 4 slave seal. With these 4 level 4 slave seals, I will be able to fuse 2 level 5 slave seals. It just so happens that one of the planet-grade advisors and stewards will be left behind. It will be barely enough to maintain the normal operation of the Black Mosquito Bastion. After muttering like this, Yi Xian immediately started to condense the slave seals. Fortunately, it was only condensing 1 level 4 slave seal. With Yi Xian's full effort, it was completed in a few hours. Then, he fused the 4 level 4 slave seals into 2 level 5 slave seals. At this point, he had a total of 33 slave seals in his possession. 1 level 9 slave seal. 2 level 5 slave seals. 30 level 4 slave seals. The 4th level is divided into the core area and the outer area. The 2 areas are separated by a circular corridor. The outer area is the area where the more than 100 servant attendants work. Wei Tuo continued to explain in detail. In this wide circular corridor that separates the 2 areas, there are 3 teams of Naibwa Mountain's personal guards patrolling continuously. Each team has 10 people, and the other 20 personal guards are on rotational rest. Their living place is also at the outer area of the circular corridor. It is a personal guard dormitory in the north corner. As for the inner area of the circular corridor, it is the core of the 4th level. It is divided into 2 parts. Delay continued to explain. The part on the left is where the intelligence center of the entire Black Mosquito Bastion is located. It is a superbrain. Naibwa Mountain's 5 planet-grade advisors are active in this area. The core area on the right is Naibwa Mountain's private property. Usually, other than him, there are only 5 trusted stewards there. Other than that, there are some demon elites who are summoned for questioning, or some beautiful demon attendants who serve him there. In other words, among the 60 targets that we need to deal with on the 4th level, the 50 personal guards can be dealt with immediately. Yi Xian's eyes lit up, and he immediately made arrangements. After entering, first subdue the 3 groups of patrolling personal guards in the circular corridor. Then, order them to monitor the core area. We will take advantage of this darkness and enter the living place of the personal guards in the north corner. First, we will deal with the other 20 personal guards, and then enter the core area. Don't bother about the 5 advisors and the 4 stewards. If you encounter them, just leave one of them and kill the rest. After we enter the core area, what we need to do is to go straight to the root of the problem. The first thing we need to do is to attack Naibwa Mountain. Wei, Delay, and the wretched mosquito killer are not to enter, lest they are killed by Naibwa Mountain. Only Li Mosquito and I will enter the core area. At that time, Li Mosquito will be in the light, and I will be in the dark. I will try to deal with Naibwa Mountain as soon as possible, and then deal with his advisors and stewards. Finally, you take the 30 subdued personal guards and gather the 120 high-level demon slaves on the 4th level. Do you all understand? After saying that, Yi Xian turned his head and glanced at the wretched mosquito killer, Li Mosquito, Wei, and Delay. His gaze swept across their faces. The 4 of them nodded, indicating that there was no problem. Good. In that case, let's begin the operation. Enter the 4th level. After saying that, Yi Xian took a deep breath and took a step back with Li Mosquito and the wretched mosquito killer. Wei was the first to step forward. After activating the space door, he stepped in. According to Yi Xian's instructions, Li Mosquito was the second to enter, followed by the wretched mosquito killer. Then, Delay activated the space door again. This time, to be safe, Yi Xian stepped in first, followed by Delay. Chapter 2688. Translator, Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios' The Great Battle Against Mount Naibwa. Due to Yi Xian's meticulous planning, the 5 of them entered the 4th level and started their operation. Everything went smoothly. Of course, this was mainly due to Lee Mosquito's Black Hole State Level 7 strength. Under the suppression of the Lee Mosquito, a total of 3 teams of 30-star Realm Devil Cultivator personal guards were all successfully subdued by Yi Xian by planting a Level 4 slave seal on them 3 times. Then, the 5 of them rushed to the personal guards' living quarters 500 meters away. Lee Mosquito acted and killed the 20 planetary state personal guards that were resting inside. Although the brains were dissected on the spot, Yi Xian didn't hand the corpses over to the demonic Bloodstar Essence Sword to absorb the essences. This was because he was worried that the demonic Bloodstar Essence Sword would evolve from a super grade to a legendary grade attack treasure. There would definitely be a commotion that would affect the entire situation. Therefore, these 20 corpses were kept in Yi Xian's Undying World and left for the demonic Bloodstar Essence Sword to absorb later. It was worth mentioning that the Undying World was the new name of the Devouring Space. Because the Devouring Space was the most advanced technology of the Undying Dynasty, the Devouring Space could continuously grow to the level of an astral realm. Therefore, it had a new name, the Undying World. At the same time, this was the top secret of the Wan Luo Federation. It was related to the creation of a new universe. Although the Undying World couldn't store a living Starry Sky rank expert, Yi Xian couldn't use this move to bring Du Wenxuan out when he wanted to help him escape. However, it was still possible to collect the corpse of a dead Starry Sky rank expert. At this point, out of the 60 people that needed to be dealt with on the 4th level, 50 of them had been dealt with. The remaining ones were the 4 trusted butlers, the 5 trusted advisors, and Mount Naibwa himself. A total of 10 people. As for the slave seals in Yi Xian's hands, there were only 3 remaining. 2 level 5 and 1 level 9. Next, the 5 of them split into 2 groups. The Wretched Mosquito Killer, Tu Wei, and Pulei each led a team of 10 subdued planetary state personal guards. They patrolled the circular corridor that separated the 2 regions, preventing any servants from entering the core region. Meanwhile, Yi Xian and Lee Mosquito had just entered the core area of the 4th floor. According to the original plan, the 2 of them would directly enter the right side of the core area of the 4th floor, which was the private property of Mount Naibwa. However, after subduing the 30 demon cultivator bodyguards, Yi Xian asked them for a bit and found out a new piece of information. It was that the Black Mosquito Star Fortress's intelligence center on the left side of the core area, which was also the superbrain of the Starry Sky. It had an emergency ability, which was self-detonation. This ability was controlled by 5 of Naibwa's advisors. If 4 of them entered the seal, the entire bastion would self-destruct. This information shocked Yi Xian so much that he changed his plan at the last minute. Now, he and Lee Mosquito were heading in the direction of the AI core hall on the left side of the core area. Lee Mosquito swaggered around. As the guardian beast of the Black Mosquito Bastion, it had been here before. In the past 10 years, it had come here once every 3 or 4 years. It did indeed have the authority to enter the 4th floor. Mount Naibwa had the master seal that controlled its mental imprint, so there was no need to worry about it doing anything destructive. It would be fine as long as it didn't leave the Black Mosquito Bastion. As for Yi Xian, he activated the perfect oscillation. His figure and aura completely disappeared. The 5 advisors of Mount Naibwa were all level 5 planetary state powerhouses. In front of Lee Mosquito, who was at the Black Hole State, they might not be as insignificant as the core state powerhouses, but they were still insignificant at best. It sounded awkward, but in fact, it meant exactly that. To put it bluntly, they were still insignificant. However, when Lee Mosquito entered the AI core hall of the Black Mosquito Bastion, the 5 of them turned their heads at the same time. When they saw that it was Lee Mosquito, they were stunned for a moment. Then they laughed at the same time. Black Mosquito, didn't you just come here 3 years ago? What's wrong? That guy called Mosquito Butcher can't satisfy you anymore? You didn't kill him, did you? Ha ha ha. That's most likely the case. I thought that kid was very powerful. He used to have 1 die every month, but he actually lasted 3 years. Now it seems that he's just It looks like he's here to ask for a boy toy from the leader again. If this goes on, the Black Mosquito Bastion will be almost depleted by you. Black Mosquito, your appetite is growing. That place is so big, so naturally, your appetite is different from before. Ha ha ha. As the 5 of them laughed mockingly, Lee Mosquito's expression darkened. she asked the air beside her. Master, can I have one more?
How dare you?
Yi Xian was furious and scolded. At the same time, he immediately attacked. A level 5 slave seal shot out and landed on the forehead of the person in the middle of the 5 Nibwa Mountain think tanks. Almost at the same time, Lee Mosquito sighed helplessly. All right, for then. Boom. Boom. Before he finished speaking, 4 mountain-like pressure appeared and directly enveloped the other 4 people.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Black Mosquito, you dare to rebel? Who's the other one? You call him master? This is unacceptable. As the 4 mountain-like pressure fell, the other 4 people's leg bones were instantly broken. Their bodies fell short, and at the same time, they roared in anger. In the next moment, Lee Mosquito had already arrived in front of the 4 of them. Without seeing it make a move, the 4 people's heads had already cracked open. 4 huge black prismatic crystals fell out and fell into Lee Mosquito's hands. Lee Mosquito handed them to the air beside her. This will not happen again. Yi Xian coldly swept his gaze over the mosquito. He saw that it was obedient, but there was still anger in its eyes. It was obvious that it was angered just now. Although Yi Xian was also curious, it was originally such a perverted nature. Why would others be so angry when they teased it? However, Yi Xian did not think too much about it. After throwing the 4 level 5 demon cores to the devouring system, he waved his hand and kept the 4 demon think tanks corpses into his undying world. At this time, the demon think tank in the middle had also regained clarity in his eyes. He directly knelt on the ground and called out to his master. All right, you just stay here. After saying that, Yi Xian activated the perfect vibration again and directly urged Lee Mosquito. All right, hurry up and move. Go to the right area. There are still 5 people. Remember, you can only kill 3. 1 butler and Nibwa Mountain can only be subdued. Let's move immediately. Nibwa Mountain has already sensed your aura just now. After saying that, the master and servant simultaneously left the intelligence center hall on the left and quickly rushed to the right of the core area of the 4th floor. At the same time, just as the 2 of them rushed out of the intelligence center hall on the left, in a huge luxurious hall that belonged to Nibwa Mountain's private territory on the right. Chapter 2689. Translator, Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translation Subduing Nibwa Mountain Black Mosquito Bastion, in Nibwa Mountain's private territory to the right of the core area of the 4th floor. This private territory also used space folding technology. Although it was only half of the core area of the 4th floor of the Black Mosquito Bastion, the internal space was several kilometers wide, far exceeding the diameter of the Black Mosquito Bastion's 1,000 meters from the outside. Basically, only Nibwa Mountain and his 5 trusted stewards stayed in this area. Of course, from time to time, some of the higher-ups of the Black Mosquito Bastion were summoned by Nibwa Mountain for questioning, as well as some servants who brought him good wine and food. Some beautiful demon women also came to serve him. Right now, there were 3 beautiful demon women there, serving Nibwa Mountain, who was half lying on the sofa. On the other hand, his 4 planet-grade subordinates were sitting on a sofa in different directions of this large area, as if nothing had happened. They were all busy with their own matters. It was not until Naboshan muttered to himself that the 4 housekeepers all raised their heads, and displeasure appeared on their faces. As planet-grade powerhouses, they had naturally sensed the aura emitted by the Black Mosquito Mother Beast just now. It was worth mentioning that the Black Mosquito Mother Beast was also very clever. When it had used its pressure to instantly suppress and kill the 4 stewards of Nibwa Mountain, the pressure it had emitted had remained at Black Hole Realm Level 6. This meant that it had benefited from the disaster because of Yi Xian and broken through to the late Black Hole Realm in one fell swoop. Although it was far stronger than Nibwa Mountain, who was at Black Hole Realm Level 4, it was 2 small levels higher. One was at the early stage of the intermediate stage, while the other was at the peak of the intermediate stage. However, whether it was Nibwa Mountain or the 4 stewards in the same area as him, they obviously didn't take it to heart. Although the Black Mosquito Mother Beast was stronger than Nibwa Mountain, it didn't dare to really make a move. At most it would come to threaten him. This kind of thing had happened several times before, but because the wretched mosquito butcher had held on for 3 years, it felt like it had been a long time. Yes, every time the Black Mosquito Mother Beast came to show its power, it was because the demon scouts sent by Nibwa Mountain to serve it were too weak and accidentally killed by it. Therefore, the Black Mosquito Mother Beast, who had not had enough fun, ran to the 4th level in a fit of anger. It emitted its aura and protested to Mount Nibwa. But the latter didn't care at all. Although the black mosquito mother beast was strong, it had the child seal of the spiritual imprint planted by the tribe's great commander who had captured it. The mother seal had just been in the hands of Naboshan. If the black mosquito were to succeed, Mount Nibwa would be able to subdue it even though it was weaker than it. However, in order to make a horse run, one naturally had to feed it grass. Naboshan understood this principle. Therefore, she had only accidentally killed the wretched mosquito that had persisted under her for 3 years. However, she wasn't satisfied yet, so in a moment of desperation, she ran to the 4th level and threw a tantrum as usual, asking for a gigolo to quench her cravings. Naturally, such a small request should be fulfilled. Moreover, because this kind of thing had not happened for 3 years, even if he was disturbed while he was enjoying himself, Naboshan still did not get angry. Bah! It's none of your business. Continue shrugging. Hurry up! Naboshan scolded softly as he turned to greet the 4 confidants around him. Go, didn't Songpang go down to check on the situation? Let him bring a stronger low-level demon up from the 2nd level and quickly get rid of that coquettish female mosquito outside. What a bummer. Sigh, I thought quite highly of that wretched mosquito butcher. I didn't expect him to only persist for 3 years. The 4 confidants looked at each other. One of them stood up and muttered to himself while shaking his head and sighing. I didn't expect him to be killed in the end. I'm afraid that in the future, we'll have to go back to being disturbed once a month. It's really depressing. As he spoke, the confidant butler had already walked to the entrance of this large area. He raised his hand and lifted a spiritual imprint. Soon, a light flashed, and the entrance that was originally flickering with a thick layer of black light film was cleared. The light film disappeared. However, outside the entrance, the black mosquito mother beast's sullen face appeared in front of him. Ah! This guy was stunned. Before he could say anything, Yi Xian, who had hidden his figure, raised his hand and lifted a level 5 slave seal, which instantly disappeared into his forehead. The confidant butler's eyes immediately fell into confusion, and he stood there in a daze. Li Mosquito stepped in with a black face, its eyes flashing with monstrous anger and killing intent. Although it couldn't enter through the light door just now, it heard all the words inside clearly. For some reason, since it was subdued by Yi Xian, its temperament changed completely in an instant. It was no longer evil, and once it heard someone talk about its past, it immediately looked like it was about to go berserk. As Li Mosquito entered, Yi Xian also entered this area quietly. At the same time, he prepared the remaining level 9 slave seal at the first time. When the time was right, he would shoot it immediately. Boom! 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 Of the 4 confidant butlers, the one Yi Xian wanted had been confirmed, so there was no need to keep the remaining 3 guys. In fact, after entering, Li Mosquito blasted out 4 black hole realm auras in succession, not 3. 3 of them directly shook the 3 confidant butlers until they bled from their 7 orifices and died. The last one was aimed at Nibwa Mountain. Although the latter was alert at the first moment and dodged, the 3 demon beauties who were serving him on the sofa were directly killed on the spot. Black Mosquito, are you crazy? Do you have to freak out like this? I have already sent someone to pick a strong demon for you. Look at how anxious you are. Don't tell me you want me to serve you directly? Come on, I am not a mosquito killer. Be careful or I will kill you. Seeing that 3 of his 4 trusted subordinates had died in the blink of an eye, the remaining one had clearly been hit and was currently standing at the entrance in a daze. As for the 3 demonkin beauties, they had also died in an instant and couldn't be more dead. You rogue! Damn it! Seeing Nibwa Mountain's current attire, Li Mosquito's cheeks immediately turned red in shame and anger. She gritted her teeth and looked at him coldly. She was really a delicate and cute young woman. Hearing this, Nibwa Mountain widened his eyes as if he had seen a ghost. He was stunned for a few seconds, then he stuttered in disbelief. Are you really Black Mosquito? Don't you think you are bullying me when you say the word rogue? Could it be that you've met your true love? Which male mosquito is it? Chapter 2690. Translator, Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translations Black Mosquito Unify, who is it? Naboshan was indeed a super being in the middle stage of the black hole realm. After Yi Xian activated the perfect oscillation, his entire aura was perfectly concealed, and he did not sense anything. However, when he raised his hand and shot out the level 9 slave seal, Naboshan immediately noticed it. This abnormality finally made him realize that something was wrong. Previously, He thought that the mother black mosquito was angry because it was anxious.
However, now that he found that there was an accomplice, the nature of the matter was obviously different.
At the same time, his expression changed abruptly. He subconsciously wanted to activate the mother seal stored in his demon core.
Since the black mosquito mother beast had already attacked him, then if he did not use this mother seal, he would not be its opponent at all.
Don't waste your energy. Your restriction mother seal is ineffective because the child seal has already been refined when I broke through to the late stage of the black hole realm. Seeing Naboshin's action at a glance, the Lee mosquito also acted pretentiously. How could it have refined the restriction child seal when it broke through to the late stage of the black hole realm?
It was clearly because of Yi Xian that it had broken through to the late stage of the black hole realm when the restriction child seal had automatically melted. However, at this time, its pretentiousness, coupled with the powerful pressure of a rank 7 black hole realm, was really effective.
What? You broke through to the late stage? Naboshin's face immediately turned ashen. Not only did he not activate the restriction mother seal in his demon core, but he even ignored the level 9 slave seal on Yi Xian's side.
After all, no matter how great the threat from Yi Xian was, how could it be compared to a supreme being in the late stage of the black hole realm? Therefore, at this moment, when Naboshin's mind was shaken, the inconspicuous level 9 slave seal landed directly on the back of his head and entered in an instant. Everything was settled now.
An hour later, Tu Wei, Ba Lei, and Wretched Mosquito Killer had brought all 110 demon-kin slaves to Mount Naibua's private territory. At this time, in this huge area, Yi Xian was sitting cross-legged on a sofa alone with his eyes closed. There were 3 people standing behind him. One was Lee Mosquito, one was Naboshin, and the last was Naboshin's trusted butler. Now, the 3 of them were standing behind Yi Xian. They were clearly acting like servants. Only Lee Mosquito was a little more confident. Naboshin and his trusted butler were a little anxious.
When this scene entered into the eyes of the 100-plus servants on the 4th floor that were herded in like sheep, they were terrified to the point they immediately knelt on the ground while their bodies trembled violently without end.
Among them, there were close to 60 peerless demon beauties. When one looked at them all of a sudden, that scene was truly indescribable. It was also at this time that the only one left alive, the think tank of Mount Naibua, also arrived. He lowered his eyebrows and stood behind Yi Xian's sofa without saying a word. Time passed slowly. Before they knew it, a whole day had gone by. During this entire day, the demon elites in the entire space quietly waited. Not a single one of them went to disturb Yi Xian, and no one had the guts to do so. Right now, the entire Black Mosquito Bastion was under Yi Xian's control. Other than the 100 or so Devil Cultivator jailers at the bottom and the 100 or so high-level Devil Cultivator servants on the 4th floor, the other Devil Cultivator experts had all become Yi Xian's devil slaves. There were more than 2,000 of them, nearly 3,000 of them. As for the rest, they'd all turned into magic cores. After being decomposed by Yi Xian's devouring system, they'd extracted the pure spiritual source energy. Either they'd already been absorbed by him, or they were still in the devouring system, waiting for him to absorb them. At this time, Yi Xian was doing everything in his power to refine the slave seals. The 100 or so high-ranking demon-kin servants on the 4th floor were all talents. Whether it was the food, the fine wine, or the reception of VIPs, they were all at a professional level. Most importantly, they were doing this kind of low-level work. Their cultivation was not low either. The 100 or so demon-kin servants were all at the satellite realm or even the planet realm. They were the 3rd and 4th realms. Even Yi Xian would have to flee if he encountered them outside. But here, they were willing to serve the higher-ups and VIPs. Such talents were hard to find even if one held a lantern. Since Yi Xian was plotting to take over the entire Black Mosquito Bastion and might not leave alone for a short time, he would try his best to delay the demon-kin in the 10 bastions stationed in the graveyard domain. He would look for an opportunity to leave the 3rd universe. Therefore, it was inevitable that the higher-ups of the 10 bastions would interact with each other. Therefore, he couldn't kill these high-ranking demon-kin servants who could hold the fort. He could only subdue them. Otherwise, if the Black Mosquito Bastion didn't have the right people to hold the fort on certain occasions, they would definitely be exposed. In a little more than a day, Yi Xian managed to refine the 100 or so 3rd level and 4th level slave seals he needed. With his current strength, he wouldn't have been able to refine them so quickly. This time, it was because he knew the Black Mosquito Bastion had fallen into his hands that he had risked his life in excitement. After the 100 or so slave seals were used up,
All the high-ranking demonkin servants present were enslaved and became his own people. At this point, the entire Black Mosquito Bastion had become Yi Xian's domain. Apart from the 100 or so demonkin wardens on the first floor and the nearly 10,000 Wan Luo Federation experts, Yi Xian had 2,000-strong demonkin troops on the second floor, all of whom were at the core realm. On the third floor, he had more than 200 demonkin technical elites. Under the leadership of Tu Wei and Par, they were stationed in the machinery area and the warehouse area. Their strength was basically at the third level of the satellite realm. As for the fourth floor, in addition to Li Mosquito and the wretched Mosquito Slayer, he had Naboshan, who was overseeing the entire bastion, as well as the think tank Hongji and the butler Pilo. In addition, there were 30 Planet Realm personal guards in attendance. Of course, on the surface, they were Naboshan's attendants, but in reality, they were Yi Xian's. In addition, he had 100 high-ranking servants on the fourth floor, as well as talents such as food, wine, and beautiful women. He had everything he needed. As far as Yi Xian was concerned, although he was still the leader of the entire Black Mosquito Star Fortress in name, in reality, he was already in existence at the level of an emperor. Alright, now that the Black Mosquito Bastion has been unified, it's time to take a look at the first floor of the Myriad Hells. After everything was settled, Yi Xian suddenly thought of the green-bearded old man Lu Wenxuan and the group of demonkin warden brothers who had supported him from the beginning. Yi Xian muttered to himself with a smile on his face. Chapter 2691. The rise of the ranking list. As the notification of the devouring system sounded out in his mind, Yi Xian was completely stupefied. He was stunned on the spot. The Federation had broken through 10 million points? He was on the ranking list? Ranked 8,999? Even now, hearing it with his own ears, he couldn't believe it. He wondered if he was dreaming. The Federation's ranking list was divided into the Celestial List, Terrestrial List, and Ranking List. The top 100 on the Celestial List, the top 1,000 on the Terrestrial List, and the top 10,000 on the Ranking List. Yi Xian hadn't been on the ranking list, otherwise the system would have notified him earlier. But now he was on the ranking list and he was in the top 9,000. This was definitely something that had never happened before. From what he knew, the Celestial and Terrestrial lists hadn't changed for many years. Even the ranking list of humans only swapped places with the last few hundred names. It was easy to understand. In order to enter the rankings, one had to accumulate federal contribution points. However, there were not many ways for the countless powerhouses of the Myriad Federation to obtain federal contribution points. Although killing demons was a very convenient way, no one had a way to determine the identity of the demons. Therefore, basically, everyone's points were in a situation where they were slowly increasing. Small changes in the points ranking became the general trend. No one had suddenly shot up the ranking list. No one had been on the ranking list, then suddenly shot up. At most, they'd be in the bottom 10,000, or 9,999. Yi Xian had shot into the top 9,000. That had never happened before. The reason Yi Xian was able to do this was obviously because he'd seized control of the Black Mosquito Bastion. His interstellar mercenary card was tied to his identity in the Federation. It had been branded in his divine sense. Now that the Black Mosquito had been taken down, the interstellar mercenary card that was tied to his divine sense immediately captured the scene. Therefore, it sent out a weak and mysterious signal, which was captured by the Sky River planet Superbrain. It confirmed his contribution and immediately awarded him Federation contribution points. This allowed him to break through more than half of the 10 million mark and enter the top 9,000 of the mortal list. The reason why Yi Xian was so surprised was because he had already ordered the devouring system to turn off the system notifications of the change in the Federation's points when they were in the second level of the Demon Scout Cave. As mentioned before, killing an ordinary Demon Scout would give 1,000 contribution points to the Federation. Back when Yi Xian was on the second floor, every time he killed a monster, the devouring system notification would ring in his mind. Ding! Congratulations to host. Your Federation contribution points have changed. Your current points. Ding! Congratulations host. Your Federation contribution points. And so on. It would sound every once in a while. Later on, when Yi Xian was hunting in large numbers, it kept ringing in his mind. He couldn't get tired of it, so he took the initiative to order the devouring system to turn off the notifications. Ever since then, Yi Xian hadn't heard any more notifications when he killed demon scouts, so he gradually forgot about this matter. However, in reality,
His Federation contribution points had been increasing rapidly all this time. The demon scouts that had been killed by Buck and the other demon slaves had also been given to Yi Xian after their brains had been dissected. Then, Yi Xian had tossed them to the devouring system for analysis, so they had also been counted. At the same time, when he took Buck and the other 2,000 demon scouts as his slaves, they were also captured by the galactic soldier imprinted in his consciousness, acknowledged, and scored. Killing an ordinary demon dweller scout was 1,000 points. Subduing an ordinary demon scout was worth 2,000 points, which was double the amount. It was easy to determine this because the spirit source core in Yi Xian's mind was connected to the demon slaves. The galactic soldier card imprinted in his consciousness was used to confirm this. What Yi Xian didn't know was that when he had subdued the Black Mosquito Mother, his Federation contribution points had already reached the 10 million mark. After all, it was a high-level enemy at the Black Hole Realm. Killing it was already hard enough, let alone subduing it. In addition to the Mount Naibwa that had been subdued, as well as the entire Black Mosquito Star Fortress, the current Yi Xian had more than 19 million contribution points, and he was about to reach 20 million. Of course, all of this had been sent out through some mysterious function of the galactic soldier card imprinted in his consciousness. It was like a simple radio frequency signal that had been received and verified by the galactic supercomputer on the nearest administrative planet. However, as for the specific situation, such as how Yi Xian had done all this, how he had obtained his contribution points, and so on, the simple signal that had been sent out wouldn't reveal any of this information. Furthermore, this kind of galactic soldier card would never make any mistakes. This was publicly known because the Federation Identity Imprint and the Federation Galactic Soldier Card were all issued by the Immortal-grade galactic supercomputer on the Imperial Capital Star of the Everlasting Dynasty. The Immortal-grade galactic supercomputer's ability was enough to cover the entire Universe 3. How could it make such a trivial mistake? Because of this, when the fact that Yi Xian had entered the top 9,000 on the human ranking list was discovered, the entire Sky River planet and even the other administrative planets of the Imperial Capital Star were in an uproar. However, no one doubted the authenticity of this matter. The Wan Luo Federation's Federation Contribution Points ranking list was displayed in real time on all the administrative planets of the Federation. This even included Universe 2, which was not part of the human race. During this time, the ranking list displayed on some of the Federation's races was only slightly delayed. In other words, at this moment, Yi Xian's name had become famous in the entire Wan Luo Federation. No one knew what kind of chaos was happening on the administrative planets in the distant starfields, but on the nearest administrative planet, the Sky River Star, it was already a mess. The first person to discover this was an ordinary galactic soldier. On one side of the Sky River planet's Federation office hall, there was a point exchange hall. All the treasures here could only be exchanged with Federation contribution points. In the center of the hall was the data of the Heaven, Earth, and Human ranking list. When Yi Xian's name and his galactic soldier serial number appeared on the human ranking list, a large string of data below fluctuated and changed. An galactic soldier who was looking up was dumbfounded on the spot. After a long time, this person raised his hand and rubbed his eyes. The string of data that was reflected in his line of sight had not changed at all. In an instant, his expression changed drastically. Human ranking list. 8,999. Yi Xian, Galactic Soldier Serial Number. The 131488080. Current Federation Contribution Points. 198765430. Chapter 2692. Translator. Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translations Uproar. The news quickly spread throughout the entire Heavenly River planet. The entire administrative planet was on the verge of exploding. Interstellar Mercenary Serial Number. The 131488080. This was clearly an interstellar mercenary serial number that had just been registered on the Heavenly River planet not long ago. The TH in front was the abbreviation of the Heavenly River planet, and the lowercase a at the back represented this year's year number. The number represented the serial number that had been registered on the Heavenly River planet this year. Serial number 131488080 was clearly just a few months ago. An interstellar mercenary serial number that had just been registered a few months ago had actually earned nearly 20 million Federation contribution points in the blink of an eye. This was simply infuriating. It was precisely because of this that some people suspected that he had killed DE of the Tianji clan. Otherwise, none of this could be explained. Of course, This kind of suspicion was just a passing remark. It was even more unlikely that anyone would take it seriously. DE of the Tianji clan couldn't possibly be worth just a few Federation contribution points. He was worth at least tens of billions. D*a minute. D*a minute, how did this brat do it? What on earth happened to him? When the news reached the Star-Lord's mansion, Bai Zhengjun was as anxious as an ant on a hot pan. He paced back and forth, muttering these words under his breath. Someone who had entered the Federation rankings, even if it was just the human ranking list, was no longer someone he could afford to offend. After all, the Heaven, Earth and Human rankings list could be seen by the entire Wanluo Federation. Perhaps some big shot from the Everlasting Dynasty was paying attention to this matter at this moment. If this brat had quietly entered the 10,000th or 999th place, it would have been fine. However, this brat had suddenly charged into the top 9,000, trampling over more than 1,000 veteran prodigies of the Federation. It was absolutely impossible that this had not attracted the attention of the big shots in the Imperial Capital Star or even the Imperial Capital Star. Therefore, Bai Zhengjun was panicking. He had a feeling that once Yi Xian officially came into contact with the Federation, then in the future, his good son, who was an important official on the heavenly dust star of the Empire, would no longer be able to control Yi Xian. It just so happened that the enmity between the two of them was irreconcilable. Even an idiot would know what this meant. Similarly, in the Federation garrison headquarters on the Heavenly River planet, Zhao Long, the military leader of this administrative planet, was also staring blankly at the big screen in front of him that was displaying the human list rankings. After a long time, Zhao Long shook his head bitterly and muttered to himself, "Fortunately, I didn't find the opportunity to make a move back then. At least I didn't offend this guy. TSK. Based on the things that this guy has done before and after, it would be fine if it was just one, but all of them are so shocking. How can this be explained by coincidence? There is a type of person who is destined to soar into the sky. The key is whether or not you can see the torch before he becomes rich. So what if we take a gamble this time? I, Zhao Long, will bet on this little freak." If the upper echelons of the Heavenly River planet were only surging with undercurrents regarding this matter, then in the Federation Hall of the Heavenly River planet, there was already an uproar. A guy who had just registered as an interstellar mercenary in the Federation Hall of the Heavenly River planet had actually obtained nearly 20 million contribution points in just a few months and rushed into the human list. Moreover, he had entered the top 9,000 as soon as he entered the human list. TSK. All of this was like a dream, and it made everyone excited. Brothers, do you see that? Nothing is impossible in this world. Who knows if the next person to enter the human list won't be one of us? Team up. Team up. Our team already has 6 interstellar mercenaries at the 7th level of the core state, and we will soon enter the depths of the graveyard domain. Our brother 8080 is only at the 8th level of the core state. Brothers, let's not give in. Only by going out will we have a chance. It's me. It's me, you know? Interstellar mercenary number 8080 is me. The one in front of me. A middle-aged interstellar mercenary was the most agitated. Heavens, I still remember that scene. Little brother 8080 was ranked just one spot ahead of me. I missed a good opportunity. If I had gotten this auspicious, I might have been the one to enter the human ranking board. Tisk! What's wrong with this guy? A series of disdainful voices sounded around him. In the distance, 3 people stared blankly at the human list of the Federation contribution points with complicated expressions. There were no words to describe the expressions on their faces. One of them was the interstellar pirate He Luoying. This person had even come into close contact with Yi Xian. If it weren't for the threat of Bai Zhengying's warship, he would have attacked back then. But now, after seeing Yi Xian enter the human list with his own eyes, He Luoying's expression was twisted and almost ferocious. He looked like he was possessed and kept muttering to himself. A mistake. A huge mistake. This kid must have had a great opportunity after he escaped that day. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to achieve what he has today. If this old man had been able to take him down that day, perhaps all of this would have fallen into this old man's hands. This is a great opportunity, but in a moment of carelessness it fell to him. This old man can't accept it. But it doesn't matter. With nearly 20 million Federation contribution points, this old man doesn't believe that this kid can hold back and not come to exchange for them. When the time comes, as long as he comes, all of his secrets will become this noble one's spoils of war.
After all, he's just a star core state ant. As long as this noble one makes a detailed plan, everything about him will fall into this noble one's calculations. Miss, do you think this Yi Xian is the guy we met back then? But why do I feel like all of this is so unreal? In another area, Lu Luo had a blank expression on her face. She turned her head to look at Shen Yuanzing, who was beside her, with a trace of disbelief on her face. If this Yi Xian is the guy we saw back then, what kind of existence did he encounter back then? Who could have given him such a terrifying opportunity? In the blink of an eye, he had nearly 20 million Federation contribution points. Even you don't have that many right now, miss. Without a doubt, the person we met that day was Yi Xian. Furthermore, the space fortress that took him away didn't belong to our myriad Luo Federation. Instead, it belonged to the heavenly fate race in the domain of the fallen stars. At this point, Shen Yuanzing, whose eyes were blurred, suddenly sighed softly. That guy, what exactly did he encounter? How did he do it? How did he manage to achieve such a feat in the celestial fate race's base camp in the human world? All of this is like a dream. What a strange person. What? Miss, you mean to say, that guy, he actually snuck into the headquarters of the Tianji clan's demon scouts, and even earned such a huge amount of Federation contribution points? Luluwa sucked in a breath of cold air, her face filled with shock and disbelief. But, is this possible? Chapter 2693. Translator, Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translations The sword spirit of the demon blood sword, not to mention the heavenly river star. Even Yi Xian himself had a face full of shock. He was stunned for a long time before he finally regained his senses. 20 million? Close to 20 million? Not long ago, he was still looking up at 10 million Federation contribution points. How unattainable it was. Now, in the blink of an eye, it was close to 20 million? A huge surprise surged into Yi Xian's heart. He couldn't wait to fly back to the Sky River planet immediately, and use 10 million Federation contribution points to exchange for a tube of level 9 genetic cultivation fluid first. As long as he got his hands on the level 9 genetic cultivation fluid, the fragment of the immortal grade superbrain in his hand would most likely be revived in the near future. By then, Yi Xian would have an independent star-grade communication system. As long as he had enough energy, he could invade the level 1 star network at any time. He could even invade the Imperial Capital Planet and the Imperial Capital Planet's network at will and obtain a large amount of information. Searching for the source of devouring would be twice the work with half the effort. The Sky River planet should be in chaos now. This is not a small problem. With a flash of inspiration in his mind, Yi Xian immediately realized the current situation. A bitter smile appeared on his face as he clenched his fists. But it doesn't matter. It's just a small Sky River planet. Even if the space pirates He Luoying and Zhao Long are both Black Hole Realm Masters, I now have the Mother Black Mosquito Beast and Mount Naibwa, who are also two supreme Black Hole Realm Masters. Besides, although Zhao Long has a 5-kilometer-long cosmic cloud state space fortress, the Black Mosquito ship is not inferior to it. In fact, it is even better. This is a cosmic river state space fortress with a diameter of 10,000 meters. Now that I'm on the Federation contribution point ranking list, even if I swaggered into the Sky River planet to exchange for points, neither Zhao Long nor Bai Zhengjun would dare to do anything to me. That would incur the wrath of the public. At most, they would wait for me to leave the Sky River planet before making a move. At that time, I will have the protection of the Black Mosquito ship and 2 Black Hole Realm powerhouses. This time, I don't even need to flee. While muttering to himself, Yi Xian could not help but feel relieved. However, now was not the time to immediately return to Sky River Star to start all this. Before setting off, there were still many things to do. First of all, it was personal strength. He immediately took out the corpses of those high-level demonkin elites that he had kept in his undying world. Following which, he raised the Devil Bloodstar Essence Sword. Buzz! As soon as this sword appeared, it seemed to have smelled a large amount of high-grade flesh and blood essence, and it actually let out a cheerful buzzing sound. This was clearly the rhythm that the sword spirit in the sword was about to take shape, and this sword was about to give birth to intelligence. Anticipation grew in Yi Xian's heart. Without any hesitation, he activated the demonic Bloodstar Essence Sword and started killing the high-rank elite demonkin corpses. Buzz! Buzz! The cheerful buzzing sound continued to ring out, and the large number of demonkin corpses that had been piled up into a small mountain rapidly withered. In the blink of an eye, they had shrunk by half, becoming a pile of bones. At this moment, Yi Xian's Devil Blood Star Essence Sword broke free from Yi Xian's control and began to circle around the fourth floor of the Black Mosquito ship on its own. From time to time, it would let out a cheerful buzzing sound. In this regard, Yi Xian was not anxious and allowed it to play around. At this moment, the Devil Blood Star Essence Sword gave him the feeling of a child that had just been born with self-awareness. It was mischievous and active, but there was a clear feeling of flesh and blood between it and his divine sense. Yi Xian could completely feel the fluctuations of consciousness of the Devil Blood Star Essence Sword. After all, this offensive magic treasure had been refined by him from the beginning. Master, I am the Devil Blood. I have awakened. Sure enough, after circling around happily, a childish voice appeared in Yi Xian's mind. It was the consciousness of the sword spirit of the Devil Blood Star Essence Sword. This little guy was quite clever. He gave himself a name, Devil Blood. However, Yi Xian quite liked this name. He could vaguely feel a domineering and murderous intent. As an offensive magic treasure, it should have such a name. As the voice sounded in his mind, the Devil Blood Star Essence Sword that had been circling around outside for a long time seemed to be a little tired. It turned into a ray of light and directly rushed towards Yi Xian. Although it was a killing treasure that had evolved to the legendary level, it was after all refined by Yi Xian. Even the sword spirit bred in it took the initiative to recognize Yi Xian as its master. In this case, it couldn't hurt Yi Xian. With a flash of blood-colored light, the Devil Blood Star Essence Sword directly charged into Yi Xian's body. As for the latter, with a wave of his hand, he stored the mountain-like pile of elite devil cultivator skeletons into the undying world within his body. After doing all this, Yi Xian glanced around at the demon slaves present. After pondering for a while, he said to the wretched mosquito butcher, "You go down and call Barker, Gue Hai Dao, and Song Ching you up. As for the other demon slaves and servants, all of them can leave." Soon, the wretched mosquito butcher turned around and left. The other servants and demon slaves in the hall all retreated quietly. The entire hall suddenly became empty. Only Yi Xian sat alone on the sofa. The others, such as Li Mosquito and Naibua Mountain, stood on the side with their hands behind their backs. Although the cultivation of the two of them was much stronger than the other demon slaves, in front of Yi Xian, their identity was the same as the other demon powerhouses. They were just demon slaves. In their consciousness, there was only the thought of serving Yi Xian as their master. There was no other consciousness of strength. Soon, Barker, Gue Hai Dao, and Song Qingyu arrived. As soon as Barker arrived, he handed over a large number of demon cores to Yi Xian. He also said that there were a large number of demon scout corpses piled up below. These were the products of the demon slaves that returned in recent days. All right, from now on, there's no need to kill all the demon scouts that returned. Guard them. When I have time, I'll subdue them. After taking the demon cores, Yi Xian directly threw them to the devouring system to decompose and extract the demon spirit origin power. After doing all this, he glanced at the demon slaves present before continuing. Now, I'll assign your roles and clarify your responsibilities. The second floor below is still under Barker's command. The commanders of the 2,000-man demon slave brigades are still Gue Hai Dao and Song Qingyu. In addition, the other demon scouts that returned one after another are slowly forming the 3rd brigade. In addition, all the demon slaves don't have to go out to mine for star cores or other things. On the contrary, the cultivation resources in the 3rd floor's warehouse are to be fully opened. All the demon slaves are to raise their cultivation as soon as possible. Chapter 2694. Translator, Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translations refining the Fortress Superbrain. In addition to the Demon's Cave abode area on the 2nd level, the manager of the 3rd level is also Barker. At this point, Yi Xian glanced at the wretched mosquito killer, Tu Wei, and Baller. Then he said, Tu Wei and Baller will still be the manager and assistant manager of the 3rd level's machinery area. If the machinery area needs more manpower, you can apply to Barker and choose from the demon slaves on the 2nd level below. As for the wretched mosquito killer, you will be in charge of the 3rd level's warehouse area. Of course, it will be under Barker's command. You only need to report to Barker and be responsible for the supplies there. As for the living area, except for the higher-ups, who can each have a villa, all the other demon slaves will be converted into apartments. From now on in my Battlestar, There will be no such thing as an elite or a poor class. The only difference is the level of your position and the weight of your responsibilities. As for the 4th level, I will personally oversee it. Naboshan and Lee Mosquito will be my guards. The think tank, Nan Huizi, will be in charge of the Artificial Intelligence Center. The housekeeper, Beng Benba, will be in charge of the daily operations of the entire 4th level. This refers to normal circumstances. If the higher-ups of other Battlestars come, Lee Mosquito and I will temporarily avoid them. Naboshan will resume his position as the captain. Everything will go according to the previous pattern. In short, we have a lot of things to do now. The entire Black Mosquito ship needs to improve its overall strength as soon as possible. At this point, Yi Xian seemed to have suddenly thought of something. He turned to look at the housekeeper of the 4th level, Beng Benba, and instructed, "All right, you and Nan Huizi go to the Artificial Intelligence Center and send a notice to the 1st level of the 10,000 hells below. Say, the captain's special envoy will be going down to patrol in the next few days." At this moment, the system notifications sounded in his mind. Ding. Reminder to the host, if you want to completely control the Black Mosquito ship, you need to refine the Artificial Intelligence Center's Starry Sky Superbrain. Then, you will be able to control the entire Battlestar. Hearing this, Yi Xian couldn't help but be stunned. Subsequently, he withdrew his consciousness and checked the devouring system for the specific situation. After a short while, Yi Xian finally understood everything. Unlike the demon kin, they didn't have a primordial spirit or consciousness. They couldn't refine Bastion's superbrain like they could refine a relic. Under these circumstances, if a Bastion needed to attack, defend, or even self-destruct, it had to be manually entered from the 4th floor's AI. But Yi Xian was different. In fact, any human cultivator could do the same, and that was to refine the Space Fortress's superbrain. That way, the Space Fortress would be equivalent to one's own treasure, and could even be stored inside one's body. This was because the superbrain of a Bastion was bound to the Bastion as soon as it was built. It couldn't be swapped out, and couldn't be separated. Therefore, when the superbrain of a Bastion was refined, it was the same as refining the entire Bastion. With Yi Xian's current strength, he was indeed unable to absorb a Starry Sky level expert into his body. However, after refining the Space Fortress, this would become a reality. Because what he absorbed into his body was a relic he had refined himself. Of course, even if it was a small private warship, it was still a magic treasure that he could refine. However, he couldn't put a Starry Sky powerhouse into a small private warship and absorb them into his body. The reason why the Bastion was able to achieve this was because it was different from small private battleships. It used space-folding technology, and when the Starry Sky experts within the Bastion were absorbed into Yi Xian's body along with the Bastion, they actually didn't have anything to do with Yi Xian himself. The folded space inside made all of this a reality. As mentioned before, the superbrain was a mysterious entity that existed between matter and life. It was like the Tai Sui on Earth. It was a mysterious half-life form that was rarely seen even in the vast expanse of space. A Bastion's superbrain couldn't compare to the superbrain of a planet like Sky River. They weren't even on the same level. The former could only control a single Bastion, while the latter could control an entire planet. The difference was obvious. But it was also because of this that Yi Xian was able to refine the superbrain with ease. In half a day's time, he'd completely refined the superbrain in the Black Mosquito Bastion's 4th level. At last, Yi Xian's system beeped in his mind. Ding! Congratulations to the host. The superbrain that has refined the Black Mosquito Bastion will now be able to command the entire Bastion with a single thought. Phew! Everything's done. From now on, Yi Xian had the authority to pass through any portal he wished. He also had the right to selectively or comprehensively grant this authority to anyone he wished. There's one last thing I need to do. Once that's done, I should go down to the 1st level of the Cataclysm and see if Old Man Lu is still alive. Muttering to himself, Yi Xian turned and walked toward the portal that led to the 3rd level. Through there, he would reach the 2nd floor of the Demonic Dweller Cave, then use the Demonic Blood Star Essence Sword to collect all the corpses of the demonic dwellers. After that, the returning Black Mosquito Bastion would no longer be slaughtered, but subdued. After all, this place was now Yi Xian's main base. Less than 3,000 of the original 10,000 demon scouts were now a problem. Even if he couldn't kill the returning demon cultivator scouts, once everything was on the right track, Yi Xian would still have to think of a way to capture the other demon cultivator scouts.
Even if he couldn't fill up the original 10,000 or so, he'd have to at least make up half of them. Of course, Lan Ju's focus was on the elite. The other bastions used the Demonkin scouts as laborers. They were forced to work in the fields, mining for planetary cores and other rare minerals. They were only given a tiny bit of cultivation resources. But Yi Xian was different. He'd ordered that none of his slaves be allowed to leave the bastion, and the supply of the black ores used to cultivate psychic power was open to them. There was only one request, and that was for all the demon slaves to start raising their cultivation base at full speed from now on. Chapter 2695. Another uproar. After Yi Xian had refined the superbrain on the 4th floor of the Black Mosquito Bastion, the data on the human ranking of the Federation Contribution Points rankings changed again in the Federation Affairs Hall located on all the administrative planets of the Myriad Federation. Human ranking 7,998. Yi Xian, Interstellar Mercenary Serial Number. The 131488080. Current Federation Contribution Points 298765430. In the blink of an eye, Yi Xian's federal contribution points had risen by another 10 million points. As for his ranking, it had gone from the top 9,000 to the top 8,000, and all of a sudden, it had risen by 1,000. After all, the difference in Federation contribution points between the last 5,000 people on the human ranking was only a few hundred or a few thousand. Yi Xian's sudden increase of 10 million points to the Federation contribution points was nothing out of the ordinary. Naturally, the reason for all this was related to his refinement of the superbrain. The Celestial Legacy clan had many experts from slave races who had entered the graveyard domain through the natural wormholes in the depths of the graveyard domain, which separated the first universe from the third universe. There were even a few Celestial Legacy clansmen among them. However, only the Demonkin had truly taken on a large scale. After all, the Demonkin's characteristics were obvious. As long as they entered the graveyard domain, they could do whatever they wanted without any need to hide. Even so, the Demonkin had only sent 10 bastions into the domain. Each of these bastions could provide the Celestial Legacy clan with countless planetary cores and rare minerals every year. It was as if the Demonkin had taken resources from human territory and used them against the humans. Therefore, if a bastion was converted into Federation contribution points, it would be absolutely terrifying. Yi Xian had only taken the Black Mosquito Bastion, which was equivalent to winning a battle. He had already received a corresponding amount of Federation contribution points for this. However, capturing them was one thing, and refining them for one's own use was another. It was equivalent to capturing a captive, and directly instigating the captive. The value was completely different. Therefore, after Yi Xian successfully turned the Black Mosquito into Yi Xian's personal magical equipment, he was awarded 10 million contribution points of the Federation again. In fact, he still had a way to obtain a large number of Federation points, and this way was already in his hands. It was just that Yi Xian had not realized it yet. There was no doubt that as he discovered this pathway, he would be able to obtain even more Federation contribution points. When that time came, Yi Xian would probably be shocked silly. As he received another 10 million Federation contribution points, Yi Xian was stunned once again. He muttered to himself, F***CK. 10 million? That's another bottle of level 9 gene cultivation fluid. I wonder, how many bottles are there in the Federation's exchange warehouse? Following Yi Xian's muttering, the Sky River planet was in an uproar once again. The Sky River Planet Federation Affairs Hall was already filled with people. Everyone had a fanatical look on their faces. Their gazes were all gathered on the mercenary serial number, which ended with the lucky number 8080. Thunderous cheers resounded. At this moment, Yi Xian had become a legend. A small interstellar mercenary in the core state had rushed into the top 8,000 in less than half a day after breaking into the top 9,000 of the ranking list of young masters, gaining 10 million contribution points of the Federation contribution points in one go. Everyone was guessing. This interstellar mercenary called Yi Xian, what exactly did he do? Bai Zhengjun, Zhao Long, He Luoying, Lulua Luo, and the master and servant of the purplish warbler were all wondering the same thing. Even Master Su and the others, who had led the fleet of space fortresses from the sky dust planet to the black hole area to deal with the small black hole, were dumbfounded. He muttered to himself, this lucky bastard. What did he do? Aside from the human camp,
the highest commander the Heavenly Legacy clan had sent to the Graveyard Star Zone at the edge of the third universe, Ba Chai, a Black Hole Realm Level 9 expert, was also furious. Among the 10 space fortresses of the Demon Scouts, the Black Wind had the most powerful guardian beast. The guardian beast of the Black Wind was a Black Wind beast, which was at the 8th level of the Black Hole Realm. Therefore, the Black Wind was also the flagship of the 10 space fortresses. Ba Chai, as the leader, was on the Black Wind. At this moment, at the center of the hall on the 4th floor of the Black Wind, the human ranking of the 1,000 Luo Federation contribution points was displayed on a huge virtual screen. As the leader of the Demon Scouts that the Tianji clan had sent to the third universe of the human race, Ba Chai often paid attention to the 3 rankings. The reason he was furious was because Yi Xian had suddenly obtained more than 10 million Federation contribution points twice in a row and then soared up the human ranking. It should be noted that every Federation contribution point represented a loss for the Tianji clan. With the strength of the human race and even the myriad Luo Federation, it was impossible for them to invade the first universe, the headquarters of the Heavenly Legacy race. In fact, this guy called Yi Xian was only an ant at the Star Core realm. He didn't even have the qualifications to enter the natural wormhole in the depths of the Graveyard domain. Since that was the case, the nearly 30 million Federation contribution points that he had earned were clearly obtained in the Graveyard star field. However, none of this made sense. Unless a few higher-ups of the Tianji clan had coincidentally come here, encountered a spatial storm, and were on the verge of death, then ran into this kid and picked up a ready-made reward. Otherwise, how could a puny Star Core realm ant like him earn nearly 30 million Federation contribution points in such a short time?
Damn it! Can someone tell me what went wrong? How did that kid do it? Did he steal one of this daddy's space fortresses? What a joke!
With a ferocious expression, Ba Chai smashed the tea table beside him into pieces and ordered, "Immediately notify the other 9 space fortresses and order all the Demon Scouts to search with all their might. We must find the truth of this matter. We must find this little bastard called Yi Xian for this daddy."
Yes.
Beside him, a trusted Star Realm steward accepted the leader's order and hurriedly went to relay the order. At this moment, Ba Chai would never have guessed that what he thought was the most impossible thing was actually the truth. The reason Yi Xian had been able to earn nearly 30 million Federation contribution points in such a short time was indeed because he had stolen a space fortress from him without anyone noticing. Moreover, this kind of rapid increase in contribution points was clearly not the end. This was only the beginning. An even more sensational storm would soon unfold.
Chapter 2696.
Inspecting Myriad Prison before Yi Xian left, he handed over the Myriad Heaven Prison's prison guards to 2 people called Sha Zhua and Mei Tang. These 2 fellows were both at the 4th level of the Star Core realm, and were considered in the upper echelons of the 100 over prison guards. During this period of time, the entire prison guards of the Myriad Heaven Prison were under the command of the 2 of them. Although they couldn't communicate with the top of Myriad Prison, they could send orders to the bottom of Myriad Prison through the AI control center on the 4th floor. Nan Huizi, the only remaining think tank of the Black Mosquito Bastion, followed Yi Xian's orders and passed down the order for the captain to inspect the bottom floor of Myriad Prison. The more than 100 Myriad Prison wardens immediately went into an uproar. All the wardens were nervous. Many people even speculated that something had happened to the new warden commander, Yi Xian. Otherwise, why would Naib Washan, as the controller of the entire Black Mosquito Bastion, suddenly want to inspect the bottom floor? It must be known that this kind of situation had never happened in the past few decades. Now that it had suddenly appeared, the reason was obviously not ordinary. With this thought in mind, Sha Zhua and Mei Tang immediately took action. First, they gathered all the wardens and tidied up their discipline. Then, they reorganized the patrol squads. All the Demonkin wardens were divided into 10 squads, 2 shifts. At any time, there were 5 patrol squads patrolling the vast Myriad Prison outside. Everything was in order and revealed a tense atmosphere. As the 5 patrol squads patrolled the outside at all times, the news that the highest level of the entire Black Mosquito Bastion was about to come down for an inspection quickly spread among the nearly 10,000 Federation prisoners in this area. The green-bearded old man, Lu Wenshuan, seemed to have guessed something inside. Alas, it seems that stupid boy still hasn't escaped. Even the highest level of the entire bastion is going to come down for an inspection. This is clearly a reorganization. I'm afraid they'll catch a few examples to set an example for others. What a pity! As Lu Wenshuan's sigh of regret spread out, a wave of curses immediately sounded in response. Old man Lu, you're still feeling sorry for that boy?
We've all been implicated by him. This time, Shan is coming in person. I'm afraid many people will be unlucky. This is clearly because he didn't manage to escape and leaked his whereabouts. Yes or no, I'm afraid that the few of us who are closer to its cage are going to be in trouble this time. We clearly found out that the kid had escaped, but we didn't report it. Mount Naibwa is most likely going to attack us. If I had known that this would happen, I would have exposed his identity in front of those prison guards. At least I could have avoided today's calamity. Sigh, to think that I placed my hopes on that brat. Who would have thought that he would be so heartless? Not only did he escape by himself, he even failed and implicated all of us. Well, you've been thinking of reporting it all this time? It's not too late for you to have such thoughts. You still have a chance now. Without waiting for the surrounding complaints to die down, Yi Xian's cold laughter rang out. He had refined the Starry Sky Superbrain, which was the intelligence center of the entire Black Mosquito Bastion. With a thought, he could know the movements in any corner of the entire Black Mosquito Bastion. At the same time, his voice could be transmitted to any area in an instant. At this moment, as Yi Xian's voice rang out in the cataclysm, his figure stepped out of the black light film of the space door. Following closely behind were Li Mosquito, Shan, Barker, and the wretched mosquito killer. Boss! Boss! Seeing Yi Xian appear, Sha Zua and Mei Tang almost dropped their eyes to the ground. They stuttered, and their faces were full of shock. All of this was too strange. The entire bastion's leader, Shan, was following behind Yi Xian like a follower. Even though they saw this scene with their own eyes, they couldn't believe it at all. At this time, they suspected that they were dreaming. What? Are you so disappointed to see that I'm still alive? Yi Xian laughed inwardly, but his face immediately darkened. How could it be? Ha! Boss, you're awesome, my brother. Yes or no, all of this is like a dream. If we knew it was you who was coming down, we wouldn't have been so nervous. We would have just done what we were supposed to do. You scared us. Sha Zua and Mei Tang immediately grinned. Although they didn't know how Yi Xian did it, the fact was in front of them. Shan was following behind, and it was obvious that he was controlled by Yi Xian. This situation made them feel very good. As demon prison guards who were sent to the lowest level, it was obviously impossible to say that they didn't have any complaints about Shan. Hearing these two guys' words, Yi Xian also grinned, and his heart suddenly relaxed. In fact, he'd been hesitant about whether or not to use the slave seal on the 100 or so prison guards below. For Yi Xian it was a simple matter, and they didn't even have a chance to resist. But if he really did so, Yi Xian would bear a grudge in his heart. Although at first he disguised himself as a demon and mixed in with these prison guards, it was undeniable that they really did treat him as a brother. When Yi Xian wanted to rebel against the original prison guard commander, they'd even supported him. Under these circumstances, if Yi Xian also took the 100 or so prison guards as his slaves, it would have some effect on his Dao heart. Therefore, Yi Xian had already made plans before coming here. If they were terrified after meeting with him, and didn't feel the same as before, then he'd plant the slave seal. After all, they were already at odds, and it was only a matter of time. But if these prison guards were still the same as before, there was no need to rush. If there really was a change in the future, then he'd deal with them. In this Black Mosquito Bastion, the 100 or so prison guards really couldn't make any waves. Let's go. Come with me to stroll around Myriad Prison. Previously I promised an old friend that I would return his freedom. Today, it's time to fulfill that promise. Nodding to Sha Zua and Mei Tang, Yi Xian walked towards Old Man Du's cage as he spoke. The two of them exchanged a look and immediately shouted loudly. They each led dozens of prison guards and trotted forward to open up a path ahead. The demons who could serve as prison guards in Myriad Prison were all intelligent people, and naturally could see the situation clearly. Yi Xian's attitude reassured them, and now they only wanted to perform well. As for the matters of the higher-ups, it had nothing to do with them. They only knew that their brother was on a meteoric rise. After a short while, Yi Xian stopped in front of Old Man Du's cage, and grinned at the completely dumbfounded Du Wenxuan. Old Man Du, this Yi has only come today to fulfill his promise. You can now swagger away at any time. Chapter 2697. Translator, Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translations caught between a rock and a hard place. You brat. You can actually control the cages of Myriad Cataclysmic Prison?
As all the cage pillars around him were retracted and disappeared, his body merged with the outside world. He didn't even need to take a step before he directly broke free from the shackles of the cage. The green-bearded old man, Lu Wenxuan, who instantly regained his freedom, was immediately stunned. He looked at Yi Xian in a daze and asked subconsciously, but his mind was full of questions. "Oh, I hit it off with Brother Naboshan at first sight. He didn't have a gift to give me, so he gave me this black mosquito bastion." Yi Xian blinked his eyes at old man Lu, then grinned and said, "Since the entire space fortress is mine, what's so strange about controlling a cage? In fact, as long as I want to, I can make all these cages disappear with a thought, and the entire myriad cataclysmic prison will become a flat and open land." He wasn't bragging. Yi Xian could really do it, and it only took a thought. If he said this before, no one would believe him. Even the green-bearded old man, Lu Wenxuan, would roll his eyes without hesitation. But now, with a living fact in front of them, coupled with a strong desire to live, the other Federation powerhouses in the other cages immediately shouted excitedly. They were so emotional that it was as if they were crying and shouting for death. The entire myriad cataclysmic prison instantly turned into a market. "Brother, my blood brother, please save me. I gave you a small space box before." Me too. This old man is quite rich. Brother Yi Xian, I'll give you half of it. Just treat me like a fart and let me go." "Ha ha ha, I didn't expect such a hero to appear in our human race. Fellow Yi, this old man thinks highly of you. We hit it off at first sight. Why don't you let me out, and we can drink 3 cups of wine first?" F***ck off, you big liar. If you want to ask for help, will you die? You're so pretentious. Ahem, fellow Yi, we're all elites of the human race. We should be friendly and help each other. Please, can you open the door first? Yi Xian frowned as he listened to the clamor. He immediately shot a glance at Sha Zhua and Mei Tang. The two of them understood and their expressions darkened as they walked to the nearest cage. "You're the one who's shouting the loudest. What punishment do you deserve for disturbing the leader? What's the point of wasting time with him? He's probably itching for a beating. Just let him feel comfortable." As the two of them spoke, they looked at each other and directly activated the restrictions of the cage. A dark blue lightning flashed, and a huge blue arc of lightning struck down from the top of the center of the cage. The guy in the cage, who had just said that he was close friends with Yi Xian at first sight and wanted to drink 3 cups of wine, was charred on the outside and tender on the inside. His entire body collapsed to the ground. For a moment, there was complete silence. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air and stared blankly at Yi Xian. Their entire body felt uncomfortable. "Ahem, what are you guys doing? How can you abuse torture? Our Wan Luo hell needs to be civilized in the future." Yi Xian coughed twice, then looked around. He cupped his hands at the cages around him and said loudly, "Everyone, don't worry. This kind of thing will never happen again. We're all fellow Federation citizens. I will restrain them and make sure they don't use torture again. Although all of you cursed me before, I've always been an open-minded person. Seeing that we're all fellow Federation citizens, I'll still help you fight for this little bit of benefit." In other words, it was clear that he would continue to lock them up, and he had no intention of letting them go at all. The people in the cages around were not fools. Their faces were gloomy, and their eyes were rolling around. They all began to think of ways to escape. It was also at this time that the system notification of the devouring system sounded in Yi Xian's mind again without warning. "Ding! Congratulations, host. You've obtained 10,000 Federation contribution points. Ranking breakthrough. Current points, 298865430. Current ranking, 7997 on the human list." What was going on? Yi Xian was stunned. He hadn't done anything just now. He had just casually boasted. Could it be that boasting would give him Federation contribution points? Wasn't this a little too ridiculous? This thought flashed through Yi Xian's mind. He was stunned for a few seconds before he realized what had happened. Besides boasting, he had also done something else, which was to release the green-bearded old man, Lu Wenxuan. Obviously, the reason why he had suddenly obtained 10,000 Federation contribution points was related to this. Lu Wenxuan was an array master of the Wan Luo Federation's human race. His cultivation level was also at the star grade, the 5th major realm. If he was captured by the demons, It would definitely be a great loss to the Wan Luo Federation. Yi Xian had released him, which was obviously a good thing for the Wan Luo Federation. That was why he had obtained 10,000 Federation contribution points. Yi Xian's eyes lit up when he realized this. He subconsciously glanced at the cages in the distance. He was so excited that he almost couldn't control himself. More than 10,000 Federation prisoners. Based on the situation just now, as long as he put away the pillars of the cages with a thought, the star mercenary card that was tied to the Federation identification card on his primordial spirit would automatically recognize that he had saved a Federation powerhouse. Even though not every one of them was as valuable as the green-bearded old man, Lu Wenxuan, who was worth 10,000 Federation contribution points, the key was that there were many of them. 5,000 contribution points per person would be equivalent to 50 million points. That was equivalent to 5 tubes of level 9 gene cultivation fluid. More importantly, this huge amount of Federation contribution points didn't just come out of nowhere. While obtaining these Federation contribution points, Yi Xian could also obtain a huge amount of cultivation resources and various treasures. Why? Was there even a need to ask? These guys didn't know that Yi Xian would be able to obtain such benefits. Therefore, if they wanted to escape, they would have to take out at least 70 to 80% of the cultivation resources and treasures in their bodies, even if they didn't completely rob them, right? Otherwise, did they really think that I was doing a good deed like lay foam? However, after a moment of inexplicable excitement, Yi Xian quickly calmed down. This matter was a little inappropriate. It wasn't that he didn't want to release the 10,000 Federation prisoners, but for Yi Xian, releasing them would definitely cause more harm than good. The harm was even greater than the tens of millions of Federation contribution points Yi Xian would obtain from this matter, as well as the huge amount of cultivation resources and various treasures he would obtain. Because once the 10,000 Federation prisoners were released, everything Yi Xian had in the Black Mosquito Bastion would be exposed. Chapter 2698. Long-term investment. What's the matter, kid? Just as Yi Xian was caught in a dilemma, the green-bearded old man Du Wenxuan had recovered from his shock. He walked from the cage that had lost its pillars to Yi Xian and patted him on the shoulder. I don't care how you did it, but I wasn't wrong about you. Tell me what's troubling you. All right, don't pretend you didn't get what you wanted. Now that you can leave, you should leave. Yi Xian chuckled wryly and said nothing more. He only urged old man Lu to leave. But you better keep this a secret for me when you get out, old man. It's not appropriate for news of this situation to spread. So that's what you're worried about. Although Yi Xian had only mentioned it casually, old man Lu was a shrewd man. He immediately understood and laughed heartily. I say, what are you worried about, kid? You've got the entire Black Mosquito Bastion in your hands. What's there to worry about? Who would have thought it was because of something so trivial? Yi Xian's eyes lit up. What do you mean? These 10,000 Federation elites are indeed a problem. Too many people, too many mouths. Once they're released, they'll be a huge threat to your secret of the Black Mosquito Bastion. Old man Lu nodded slightly. As he spoke, he had already raised his hand and pointed to the surroundings. Then, he continued, however, these are more than 10,000 elites of the Federation after all. To be able to be captured and imprisoned here by the demons with great effort, all of them must have extremely outstanding achievements or advantages in a certain field, or perhaps they are people with extraordinary backgrounds. For the Wan Luo Federation, this is definitely a huge talent resource. It's one thing for the demonkin to be in charge of the Black Mosquito Bastion, but now that it's in your hands, are you really going to harden your heart and ignore the Federation's influence? Of course, it would be an exaggeration to say that these 10,000 people can affect the general situation of the Federation. They can't even affect the general situation of an empire. But have you heard of this saying? It's called the butterfly effect. And who can say that after they are released, one day in the future, one of them won't play a crucial role in the war between the Myriad Net Federation and the Heaven's Legacy race? Therefore, you must release the experts of the Federation. However, this doesn't mean that you have to risk exposing your secret and sacrifice yourself for a righteous cause. That would be too fake, and this old man can't say it. If you want them to keep a secret, it's actually very simple. Just make them swear a Tao oath one by one and hand over a Tao oath brand to you. If anyone wants to reveal this secret in any way, including being forced to confess or having their soul searched, then, you'll be able to sense the Taoist oath brand they handed over immediately. Because this oath is related to the great Tao of the universe, you'll be able to sense it instantly, no matter if you're in the third universe or the first universe. At that time, you'll only need a thought to destroy that person's soul and primordial spirit under the backlash of the Taoist oath. In addition, there's another advantage to this method, and that's that you can use it against them. Even if they don't break the Taoist oath brand in their entire life, as long as the Taoist oath brand is not taken back, their Tao heart will never be able to reach perfection. It doesn't matter if their cultivation is weak now, but in the future, once their cultivation rises, this flaw will become extremely important. It may even affect how high their final accomplishments on the path of cultivation will be. In other words, as long as you have these 10,000 Taoist oath brands in your hands, then in the future, if a few of these people become peak existences of the Federation, such as the Lord of the Capital or the Imperial Advisor of the Capital, you'll have struck gold. Once they reach that level, they'll definitely do everything they can to redeem the Taoist oath brand that belongs to them from you. Moreover, they'll have no choice but to use the Taoist oath brand honestly. They won't be able to use any other schemes, because you can decide their life and death with a single thought. Once they reach that level, these guys will clearly be even more afraid of death and won't take the risk. Before Old Man Lu could finish speaking, Yi Xian's eyes lit up, and they grew brighter and brighter. Not only would he be able to obtain tens of millions of Federation contribution points, but he would also be able to obtain a large amount of cultivation resources and various treasures. More importantly, this was equivalent to a long-term investment, and the investment would all be in excellent stocks with potential. When he really did reap some benefits in the future, even if only 1% or even 1,000th of these 10,000 potential stocks would take the initiative to repay him, the benefits would be unstoppable. After all, those who would take the initiative to repay him were definitely existences that had already reached a certain level. Even if Yi Xian's level might already be higher than theirs by then, who would complain about taking the initiative to repay such a good thing? Not only would he obtain immediate benefits, but he would also be able to make a long-term investment. There was no better thing in the world than this. The moment he thought of this, Yi Xian became excited. He immediately spread his voice throughout the entire myriad catchment prison. You all heard what Old Man Lu said just now. It's not that I don't want to let you go, but there are too many people and too many mouths. This matter is too big of a threat to me, so I must make an oath. Moreover, because this plan was something that Old Man Lu helped me come up with, in order to prevent all of you from harboring any grudges, when you make the oath and hand over a strand of the Tao Oath brand, you must add a sentence. Never scheme against Old Man Lu in any way because of this matter. My request is that simple. If you can accept it, you can make the oath now. After you hand over the oath brand and I verify that it's correct, the pillars around you will immediately disappear. Of course, if you feel that the conditions are too harsh and you can't accept it, I won't force you. You can continue to stay in this myriad catchment prison. I, Yi Xian, also guarantee that things like lynching will never happen again, but that's all. Of course, in addition to the oath, you must more or less leave some money to buy your lives. After all, I spent a lot of effort and almost died many times before I finally took down the entire black mosquito. Under such circumstances, there's no reason for you to sit back and enjoy all the benefits while I bear all the risks. Making an oath is only a guarantee for this Ye's inherent interests, but it doesn't reflect that you've shared the slightest bit of the risks this Ye had to bear. Therefore, this Ye's suggestion is to take out 70% of all the cultivation resources and various treasures on you. I risked my life to do this, but you only took out 70% of the resources and treasures after it was done. You've profited greatly from this deal.